And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Nagel versus Goulet, step forward, please.
20-year-old salesperson Michael Nagel is suing his ex-roommate, 18-year-old model Jessica Goulet, for unpaid rent and bills. Jessica is countersuing, claiming Michael sold her stereo and pet bird.
The defendant was a roommate of yours, and it is your claim that she moved out owing you for some rent and bills.
Correct, Your Honor.
Ms. Goulet says that she owes you nothing. As a matter of fact, she says that you have retained her property and sold some of her property, according to her, and that you actually owe her money.
Yes.
Is there a rest of that outfit that you're wearing? When you go to a court, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to cover your belly button. Do you understand?
I do understand that.
Good. But?
I was just going to say that I only have a very limited amount of clothing because all of my other property is at his place.
Well, would you like to borrow her shirt? That would have been more appropriate. Do you understand?
Yes.
You have to know where you're going. You wouldn't go to church in that outfit, would you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you know enough to do that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, when did she become your roommate and under what circumstances?
October 28th, 2003, Your Honor. The circumstances were, I've known her brother for close to 9 years now. We moved in together. However, his job made him move. So under his advice, I took in his sister and her boyfriend as my new roommates because without that, I would have to cover the rent and bills all by myself.
Okay. They were each going to pay how much? A third of the rent each?
They each were going to pay $225 a month for rent, Your Honor.
And how much was your rent?
$525, Your Honor.
And they did move in on the 28th of October?
Yes, Your Honor.
What happened in November? Did they pay rent?
Yes.
December?
Yes.
January?
No.
What happened in January?
Her check bounced, Your Honor, and I had to cover that, and I've only been reimbursed $150 from that check.
Why did your check bounce in January?
My parents had just moved, and I was taking care of everything on my own. I had just gotten a car and things like that, and I thought I had the money. If I wrote the check, I would be able to put it in the bank and it would clear, but it just...
So she owed you $75 from January?
$113 from January, Your Honor.
Why?
Due to the fact that there was a late fee on this.
I got you. Okay, so that's January. And what happened in February?
I had come back from Nashville, Tennessee on February 3rd, and I had asked her about rent because it was due. I had talked to the landlord, and he had given me an extension to turn it in on the 3rd. So I asked her about rent, and she flatly said, you know, I don't have it. So Is that
right?
Yeah, I told him that I didn't have it, that I would get it to him as soon as I could.
And she didn't, Your Honor.
When did you move out?
I actually moved out. He had kicked my boyfriend out, say January 16th, around that time. And there was a big discussion about that.
Why did you put her boyfriend out?
Because he didn't pay bills, Your Honor.
I didn't agree with it because he wasn't going to give him any time. My boyfriend agreed to give him $600 on that Monday, but he told him no.
Why didn't he pay him when he was supposed to?
Because he wasn't going to get the money until that Monday. He couldn't get the money till then.
Your Honor.
Because of his work.
So the two of you expected him to cover your bills until you could get your acts together.
He told us that he had an extension on all of that and it was okay. When my boyfriend offered to give him the $600, he said that if he gave him the $600 that he could stay there, no problem. And then he called my brother and my brother told him no, that just kick him out now, don't even take the money. So he just packed up his stuff.
What was the $600 for?
The electricity bill, the phone bill, and the cable bill. He had ran up a large amount on my cable bill by ordering adult entertainment on there, as well as movies. And I have proof of that in my records, Your Honor.
I believe you. Listen, if they had paid their bills, I assume you wouldn't have minded if they stayed.
Right.
Right? Okay, so she owes you for February's rent.
Yes, Your Honor.
You didn't pay February's rent, did you?
I moved out before February 1st.
No, she didn't, Your Honor.
No, you just told me you were there.
I actually was staying there, but during the day I was with my boyfriend. And when I came back to get clothes and stuff like that, because I was staying the night with him, he was like, your check bounced, I need the rent, and you have to get out. You either pay me or you get out. So I told him that I would leave, that I would try to go get the money. When I came back, he said, you can only take your clothing because I didn't want to stay there anymore because when he gets pissed off...
See, Your Honor, I gave her a chance to get her clothing and she refused.
I refused to get my clothes?
Yeah,
That's all I have is my clothes. You have everything else. You have everything else of my belongings.
Miss Goulet, first fix your shirt. Very good. Don't fight with each other. You want to fight with each other, you go outside. You don't come inside.
Sorry.
Okay, $338, $113 for January, that's still due and owing, $225 for February, because you lived there most of the month. If you left to follow your boyfriend, that's your problem. Grow up. You got to grow up. Now, let's talk about her property. You still have her property?
Yes, Your Honor.
What about her bird? She says that you sold her bird.
She left it there, Your Honor. That was her brother. Her brother decided to sell it, not me.
Step up. Tell me your name.
My name's James.
Did you come into possession of her bird?
Yes.
When?
After she left, I had started staying there to help Mike out with his bills and stuff like that, and I sold her bird as well as her stereo. And then she's also counterfeiting.
Why did you do that?
Well, just, come up with some extra money to help him out.
And also, Your Honor, she had been gone for over a month by that time. She had not called or come by to get her stuff. Therefore, I had no room and nowhere to keep the stuff.
She doesn't have, you don't have to take care of a bird. Well, you want the money for your bird back?
The money for my bird was $500, bird and cage, and plus my stereo was $150.
Your brother sold it.
I know,
You're
but
suing the wrong person. Now, as far as your clothes and other property is concerned, you still have them?
Yeah, she can.
When could she pick them up?
She's picking up right after court, Your Honor.
Terrific.
Now, also, Your Honor, we had a lease agreement when her and her boyfriend moved in that if they did violate the lease, they would be responsible to pay their half of the rent until March.
Where? Show me. They signed it?
Yes, Your Honor, and it's dated also.
Are you still living there?
I actually moved into a different apartment in the same building, Your Honor.
When?
April of this year, Your Honor.
But, Honor, all I'd like to say is I've tried countless times to call him and get a hold of them. My witness has tried calling them. I have tried calling them.
For what?
To get a hold of them. So I was going to offer him $500 to pay off the bills so I can get my stuff back. But
He's giving you your stuff back.
I know, but I was going to do this before we even had to go to court. I didn't want it to go this far.
I have a question, though. If she wants her stuff back and was offering me $500, why is she suing me for $5,000?
Because
she's not going to get 5,000 yen. Do you understand? You're just going to give her back her stuff. And please give her back all of her shirts.
Yes, Your Honor.
I wanted to have a nice long shirt.
And pants.
Did they give you any deposit when they moved in?
Yes, Your Honor, they did.
How much of a deposit did they give you?
They gave me $250 together. $250 had to go towards some of the bills.
You got a lot of bills. So far, she owes you for January and February's rent.
Correct, Your Honor.
You know, this is not windfall day for you. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $338, and 5 days from today, she will pick up all of her stuff. Thank you very much. That's all.
Why is our excuse you may step out?
Towards the end, I mean, she became a little bit belligerent and wouldn't pay bills, so...
If anyone has a problem with, like, the way people act, it's him because he has, like, an anger management problem.
No, she really liked her bird, but at the same time, I'm pretty busy.
I love my brother dearly and all, but what he did, it hurt.
Case.
All parties in the matter of Garrett versus Cook. Step forward, please.
Hotel clerk Alan Garrett is suing the mother of his child, 27-year-old student Candace Cook, for the unpaid balance on a Toyota Supra. Candace says shortly after taking ownership, the engine died.
Mr. Garrett, the defendant is your former girlfriend and you have a child together. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Well, we weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but we had a relationship, yes.
Well, you weren't her math teacher, right?
No, ma'am.
You weren't her plumber, right?
No, ma'am.
In the classic sense. You had a relationship. She was a girlfriend or something.
Yes, ma'am.
You had a child together.
Yes, ma'am.
You have custody of that child.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've always had custody of that child.
Yes, ma'am.
How old is the child?
A year and a half.
Boy or a girl?
Boy.
According to your complaint, you sold Miss Cook a car.
Correct.
Back in March. It was an old car, a car that you were not using. You sold her the car for $600.
Correct.
And she acknowledges that that's what happened, correct?
Yes, he gave me a car. Well, I mean, he didn't give it to me, but it was agreed to pay for it eventually.
You don't have any other children, do you?
I have an older child, yes.
Where is that child?
With my mother.
How old is that child?
9.
What do you do?
I'm a student at this time. I'm just now getting back to school and trying to get things together.
Where are you a student?
I'm at the Richland Community College.
Anyway, in March you sold her the car for how much, sir?
$600.
And according to what I read in your complaint, you did that because she wasn't visiting your son regularly and you really wanted her to be able to visit him.
Correct.
She had the car from March, is that right? Until September, is that right?
Yes, around that
I mean, are you together? Is there something wrong?
We're not. No, I'm just... He said it wasn't for visit. It was because he said he wanted me to get a job and everything else.
A job would be nice here.
And so, you know,
job would be nice. What do you do? You have 2 children. Somebody else takes care of both of your children. You should be working. Who is this?
This is my roommate.
This is your roommate. Do you work?
Yes, I do.
Good. What kind of a job do you have?
I'm a computer technician.
What are your hours of work?
It's usually afternoon 1 to 10 p.m.
That's a full day. Do you have, I'm speaking, do you have children?
No, I do not.
So you support yourself?
Yes.
That's what people do when they have themselves to take care of, or in your roommate's case, when she has 2 children that are being supported by other people. They get a job. Now you can sit down. Perfect. Now, she ran the car and had the car in her possession until September, when, according to you, what happened to the car?
The engine blew, so I parked it. And then I called him and said, it's calling. I'm going to call a junkyard. And then once I get that money, I'll give you the money that I get from the junkyard. Well, I get a call from some guy I don't even know, never met, never anything, saying he's going to come get the car that Alan told him to come and get it. So that's where it turns up. I gave the car to somebody else. I don't even have
somebody
it.
to pick up the car?
A friend of mine that I had originally got the car from expressed interest in it. I told him the story about what had happened to it. For whatever reason, he was interested in the car. I said, well, if you want to talk to her about it, I'll give you her phone number, and I passed that information along so he could call her.
But he didn't give you the car. Did he give you any money for the car?
No, ma'am.
No. So you're actually $600. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Good, good. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $600. That's all. Get a job.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I thought the judgment was fair, kind of what I expected.
Well, I don't agree with it because his friend has the car.
Went quick, there wasn't much to say.
I drove the car for a while, but he wasn't driving it anyway.
I'm pretty poor and I needed my money.
We'll probably still be friends.
I have no hard feelings at all.
All parties in the matter of Fisk versus Billy, step forward, please.
18-year-old cashier Francis Fisk is suing his former friend, construction worker Diane Billy, for injuries his pit bull received while in Diane's care. Diane is countersuing for unpaid dog-sitting fees.
According to what I read, you have a dog. What kind of a dog is it?
She's a pit bull mix.
And for some reason, you were moving, whatever, you couldn't take the dog with you, so you asked the defendant if she would be willing to take care of your dog for a while.
Yes, there was agreement set up between her and my girlfriend's father, and she's a friend of his. And,
yes.
He asked her if she'd keep the dog. She said, yeah, it's not a problem. She lives out in the country as long as we supplied her food.
The agreement was not with you, it was with your girlfriend's father.
That's right.
Okay. And how long was she supposed to mind the dog for?
We didn't really have a set time. It was just until we found a new place to live.
So anywhere from a day to 10 years?
Basically. Just until we found a spot to live.
According to your complaint, when you got the dog back, someone had severely beaten the dog.
Yes, that's right.
And had severe head trauma. You want Miss Billy to take care of the vet bills.
Yes.
That's what the case is about. And Miss Billy says she doesn't know what happened to the dog. She certainly didn't beat the dog. And you owe her for food and for boarding the dog. So that's your counterclaim.
Yes.
When did she take possession of your dog?
It was towards the end of August.
How old is this dog?
13 months.
How long had you had her?
Like 10 months.
From the time she was a puppy?
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you go to visit regularly?
Yeah, at least 3 or 4 times a week.
And did you bring the food as you promised you would?
Yes.
All the time?
We left a bag over there so she could feed the dog when we weren't there. But every time we went over there, my dog's food bowl was empty, her water bowl was dry.
If that happened every time, Mr. Fisk, why didn't you remove the dog from her care?
Because I had no place else to take her.
Why didn't you allow her to be adopted by somebody else?
Nobody wants a pit bull.
Well, you wanted a pit bull.
That's right.
I had another case not long ago with people who had a pit bull. So evidently a lot of people had a pit bull. That's not a smart thing to do.
It was hard. I mean, it was...
What efforts did you make to try to find somebody else to take the dog?
Everything I could. I talked to my mother, her friends, everybody I knew, and I couldn't find a place.
Did you put an ad in the paper?
No.
For a 10-month-old pit bull?
No.
Friendly?
No, I didn't put any ads in the paper.
When did you find the dog injured?
I got a call on October 15th at about 10:30 saying, your dog is sick, I don't know what's wrong with her, you need to come get her. I couldn't go, I had to go to work, so I got in contact with my girlfriend at school. She came home, her and her stepmother went and got the dog and took her to the vet.
When did you see the dog?
When I picked her up from the vet's office after I got off work.
Step up. Tell me your name.
Justine Price.
Ms. Price, would you describe the dog when you went there?
Well, she was usually kept in a kennel, and she was in their breezeway inside of a cardboard box. She was bleeding really bad from her mouth, and when I tried to, move her lips to see what was wrong, I don't know, it was like a seizure. She started turning her head around real bad, so we took her to the vet.
You have a report from the vet?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see it, please.
You just want all the evidence?
No, I want the report from the vet. The dog had a broken jaw as a result of trauma. They wired her jaw. How did this happen to his dog?
I don't know.
Who lives in your house?
I have roommates that live there. Matt was there.
Who's Matt? How is he related to you?
He's not. He's a good friend of mine. I work with him.
Was Matt at home when this happened?
We don't know what happened. The dog was loose for 2 days, and I called to let them know that the dog was loose for 2 days. And
when was the dog loose?
It
was
2
days?
2 days before the Friday that I fed the dog. They came back that Thursday. She got loose on Wednesday, and she was gone for 2 days.
And then she came back?
And she came back. I tied her up. It was dark out. I tied her up. I didn't think that anything was wrong with her. She didn't act, you know. And then the next morning when I went to go feed her, that's when her head was sideways and she looked sick. So I called Frankie to let him know that their dog was sick and they'd take it to the vet. And he said he had to go to work. They never.
You know what happened to the dog?
I have no idea.
What?
He's the one that's accused of hitting my dog. But I couldn't do anything about it because I couldn't prove it.
Well, what makes you think he hit your dog?
Because the person that spoke to her and spoke to us told us the whole story. I mean, I wasn't there. I can't say that's what happened. But I heard the same story from two people that both associate with Diane. They both go over there and party and get drunk and whatnot. They both associate with her, and they both told me that he's the one that hit my dog.
Oh, somebody hit your dog. What do you do for a living?
Work construction, concrete.
How old are you?
18.
Did you have a party over there on October 14th?
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah is not an answer. Yes is an answer.
Yes, ma'am.
How many people were at the party?
Just a couple people. It was
a couple is two.
All right, like 5 or 6.
Now, I want you to list the 5 or 6 people that were at the house. I want you to make sure you list them all right.
Sean, Becca, Dusty, me, Diane, and Marky.
And what was the drink of choice that evening?
Bud Light.
Anything other than Bud Light?
No, ma'am.
Where was Miss Bealey?
Oh, she was there. I'm sorry.
Were you playing any games that evening, sir?
No, ma'am.
Where was the dog?
Outside.
Tied up?
Yeah, it should have been.
Is the dog making noise?
It barked.
How many times did the dog bark?
I don't know.
Did you go out to see?
Dogs bark. They were both barking.
So between the time you had this party on the 14th and the 15th, something happened to the dog. What do you think that was?
I have no idea.
I don't either. All right, let's take care of this. You are responsible for the vet bills, madam. When you assume a responsibility, even if you assume a gratuitous responsibility, you have an obligation to see to it that no harm happens to this dog. We understand each other? And if you've got 5 or 6 teenagers, either chronologically or mentally, drinking beer in your house, and something happens to this dog, that's your fault. Now, these are prospective vet bills. It may work, the jaw wiring may work, and may not work.
When I spoke to my vet, she's had some problems breathing. And when I spoke to him, he said there's more than like a 90% chance she's going to have the major surgery.
Probably. Well, in any event, this dog has suffered substantially. Your claim is for $1,000, which, as far as I'm concerned, is most reasonable considering the vet bills that you had and the prospective vet bills. And I'm giving you these vet bills because I believe that they're responsible for what happened to your dog. Either they or some of the other drunken people that were at her house on the 14th of October. But I have pets. I love them. And if I left them someplace and went over to see them and there was no food and no water, that may happen once. But you said you never saw food and water in the bowl.
It was hard.
Then you don't tell me it was hard. It's your fault. Better off to take a dog to the Humane Society and let them look for another home for the dog rather than to let the dog stay there and be without food and water so that it runs away and to have its head used as a golf ball. You're not supposed to be an idiot even though you're 18. We understand each other?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,000. That's all.
What is our excuse? You may step out.
He was messing around, throwing a golf ball up in the air, hitting it with a bat.
I had no idea what happened to the dog. I mean,
dog jumped to get the ball. He hit the dog instead.
Everybody says I did it. Whatever.
And then they tried to lie to me.
I don't know what happened with the dog, but when I found out that the dog looked sick, and then I did call him.
I'm not sure. I didn't get a call till the next morning.
It was fine the night before, and the next morning when I got up to feed her, she didn't look right.
I think they should have called us and let us know what actually happened and not made up stupid stories about it.
Her head was just twisted, and she just wasn't the same dog.
One that the dog was loose for 2 days and they had no idea where she was.
A little bit of blood coming out of her mouth.
Another one that just she went out there in the morning and the dog was I heard several stories.
Should have come over and checked on the dog every day.
I should have got my dog out of there, but I didn't have any other options.
Yeah, I do feel bad, but I mean, what can I do?
I think she made the right decision, and I greatly appreciate it.
Well done.
Naval Officer Marvin Brayfield and his wife, Jennifer Jesse, are suing the former guardian of Marvin's son, Carolyn Blake, for filing false charges with Child Protective Services. Carolyn claims Marvin kidnapped his boy.
This is case number 353 on the calendar in the matter of Brakefield Jesse versus Blake. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Have a seat.
Mr. Brakefield, this is your girlfriend, is that right?
This is my wife.
This is your wife now?
Yes.
At the time of this, it was your girlfriend?
At the time of it, yeah.
Okay. According to what I've read, several years ago, you had either a relationship with somebody, you had a brief marriage.
I was married to my first wife.
Okay. And that marriage produced a child.
Yes, it did.
A child that your then wife was not interested in raising.
That's correct.
And you took custody of that child.
Yes, I did.
But you weren't either in a position or you weren't interested in being a full-time parent either. So you turned your son over to the defendant for the purpose of care. And Mrs. Blake cared for your son for how many years?
21 months.
And during that 21 months, you were in the armed forces?
Yes.
Where were you stationed?
It was in Point Loma, California, in San Diego.
And Mrs. Blake cared for your son every day? He slept there?
Not full-time, no. She was a daycare provider and a close friend.
You mean your son was only there during the day?
She was there during the day, except for Tuesdays and Thursday nights, where she offered to keep him overnight so that I could go work out at the gym and perhaps get some more personal time.
Other than that, he slept at your house?
He slept overnight at my house, yes.
Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. He was with me 24/7 for the first 4 months. He didn't even come by to visit his son, but twice. That was only after we requested it.
So for the first 4 months, he was with you full-time?
He was with me full-time the whole 21 months.
Does that sound right?
No, it's not correct at all.
Okay. Whether the child was with you 24/7 for the first 4 months or 21 months practically full-time, you started a new relationship with the co-plaintiff, and you decided that it was no longer necessary for Mrs. Blake to take care of your son, so you picked him up one day from her home, didn't tell her that you did not plan to return him, and took him, I assume, back to your house.
Yes.
Mrs. Blake called Child Protective Services. She tried to contact you. She didn't know where you were. She didn't know where the child was. She called Child Protective Services, and she made a report of suspected child abuse and or neglect. And you did do that.
Yes,
you acknowledged that you did that.
Yes, I did, and I was concerned deeply about Cody. He was not ever out of my sight without me knowing where he was more than 2 days.
Just a second. Well, that's what your case is involving. Your case is involving this call to Child Protective Services, which you say were unnecessary and unwarranted, causing you all kinds of grief, and you want to be compensated for that.
Yes.
And Mrs. Blake said that what you really did was amount to kidnapping this child without telling her that you were taking him, without telling her that you did not intend to return him to the home. And she had a legitimate concern about his well-being, and she called Child Protective Services. Right?
That's correct.
So, there's no question that for almost 2 years, Miss Blake was an integral part of your son's life. Is that right?
That's true.
How did he refer to her?
Mom.
I'm asking him.
He called her mommy because that's how she'd call him mommy. She'd call him mamas, so that it would what he would say when he was around her.
All I want to know from you is, I want a direct answer to my question. Direct answer to my question, Mr. Brakefield, is that he called the defendant mommy, right?
Yes.
Cody also calls him mommy. He also calls me mommy. He calls a lot of people mommy.
I didn't ask you anything yet. Nothing. How did you find Mrs. Blake?
She was a wife of one of my coworkers when I was at a different command.
You must have regarded her highly if you turned your son over to her.
I didn't have anybody else.
So what you're telling me is you would have turned him over to anybody because you needed a babysitter. Is that what you're telling me?
No. She offered to help me out. I was in a tight situation. She offered to help me out, and I accepted her help.
Mr. Brakefield, you're not going to be able to get away from my question. Either you believe that she was a quality caregiver, or you didn't know whether she was a quality caregiver or not, but you used her anyway.
I believe she was a quality caregiver.
That's a better answer. So, did anything happen during the course of the 21 months that Mrs. Blake was caring for your son that led you to believe that she was not a quality caregiver?
Yes.
Tell me what that was.
There were several occasions where I went into her house when picking my son up from her. There would be dog feces outside of her bedroom or down near her office, and she would tell her son to clean it up, and it would just stay there.
So that happened when?
On several occasions.
How much into the babysitting?
It was probably anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half into it.
Well, you weren't sufficiently concerned about that to take your son out and find a different daycare for him, right?
I felt it was something that I could resolve.
How could you resolve that?
By talking to her and saying, no, I've brought this up to you on past occasions.
So what I'm asking you is, it never reached the point where you felt as if your child was in danger.
Not in physical danger, no.
Well, in physical danger from being in a place that was unclean.
Well, he was allowed to walk around with cleaning products like the dishwasher pillow packets. I brought that up, and I was told, he can't break those open. They're tough to open. You can it's hard to open them, so he's perfectly safe.
When during the course of her babysitting for your son did that happen? How old was he?
It actually happened on multiple occasions. I just kept bringing it up, and so, oh, he's fine. And then one day I get a phone call from her saying, well, I'm not going to let him walk around with the cleaners anymore. He just sprayed 409 into Trevor's eyes.
When did you take your son out of Miss Blake's care?
On the 25th of July of this year.
And what was the impetus of you doing that?
I have a letter that I sent her that listed the reasons why I was terminating her services.
Let me see the letter.
The straw that broke the camel's back was that I allowed her to take my son to Las Vegas because she was going there for 4 days, one of which on the very first day was my dad's day off because my father lives there. And I figured, well, she can take my son to see his grandfather.
Yes.
So the very first day that she was there, it was my dad's day off. My dad did not see his grandson that day.
All right.
My dad didn't see his grandson until the night before they left, and only for half an hour. So I was on the phone with my dad when she walked in the front door. So my dad says, well, they're here. I'm going to see my grandson. I hung up the phone. Half hour later, I called him back expecting to hear, oh, yeah, everything's going great. I'm loving my grandson. I don't get that. I get, she doesn't like you. I said, well, Dad, why doesn't she like me? She has nothing good to say about you. She said you're self-centered. She says you're never there for your son. And I said, this is why I had her as a babysitter, because I'm in the Navy and sometimes I do work some late hours and I live 40 miles from work. So sometimes I go home and I sit in traffic for an hour and a half and I don't get there till 6, 7 o'clock at night. And it's not that I don't want to be there for my son. It's just that I had her services so that I wouldn't have to go to my boss and say, it's 4 o'clock, I got to pick up my son from daycare.
Your Honor? Just a second. Okay. So are you telling me that the reason you decided to terminate her employment, by the way, how much did you pay her?
$300 twice a month. My father also told me that...
Don't tell me anything that your father told you, sir, because that's all hearsay. So you paid her a little over $600 a month. Is that right?
He didn't pay for the first 4 months. We got the baby on December 26th. He had nothing, no diapers, no clothes, no items. This is the first baby item I bought him.
Just a second. So is what you're telling me the first 4 months
4 months,
gave you...
nothing.
Is that right?
Dime.
No, that's not true.
Show me proof that for the first 4 months you paid her $300 twice a month.
I paid her in cash. She insisted on it.
And later?
It was all cash. I mean, I paid her by check one time, and she got upset because she said she didn't want to have to make a trip to the bank.
So let me ask you this question, sir. You wrote this after you had already taken your son
out of her
without
care.
telling her.
Right.
So
Your Honor, I have court documents to where Carolyn was so involved in his divorce and so pushy in regards to the care of Carolyn that
Cody.
the attorney actually asked that she not be in the picture anymore.
Doesn't make any difference. I told you once before. I didn't ask you anything. When did you meet him?
In March.
When did you start dating?
March.
And were you dating in April?
Yes.
Where did you live?
In Oceanside.
How did you meet him?
I met him online.
And when did you decide to get married?
June.
So you decided to get married in June, and in July all of these irritants that had been bothering him for 2 years all of a sudden made it so that he took the child out of Miss Blake's custody without giving her any advanced warning. Is that the time frame we're talking about?
That's right.
Right. I got it. So you'll answer me when I ask you a question. Do you have children?
No.
Okay. Is somebody from Child Protective Services currently monitoring your home?
No, they closed the case.
Did I look as if I was looking at you? I was looking at him.
They closed the case and they sent they gave me a letter.
I want to see the closed letter. This letter suggests that they conducted an investigation over a 2-month period, and that you now have your child in a licensed daycare facility, but they recommend that he be tested at the Hope Infant program because the daycare provider thinks that the child may have some developmental deficiencies. Have you done that, sir?
I have already.
And what's the result?
The daycare provider thought he might have a speech delay like one of his other brothers did. And I had a representative of the Hope Infant program come to my home, and it was determined that he does not have a speech delay because he's been talking, he's been putting 3-word sentences together and doing just fine.
Okay. Now we're going to get back to my original question, Mr. Brakefield, and that is, why did you not notify Miss Blake that you planned not to return Cody to her care?
Because before my first wife lost her parental rights, we had actually agreed to physical custody sharing. I informed Miss Blake of that, and she got very angry with me and started yelling at me that I was sending my son off to die, and so I figured, not wanting to go through that again and not knowing what her reaction this time would be, I figured a written letter would be the best route to go.
But you took him on July 25th, according to you, and you didn't write this letter, according to the date on the letter, until August 13th. So between July 25th and August 13th, what communication did you have with her?
I had none.
Well, that's wrong,
Except,
sir.
when I told her I was going to go to Las Vegas to visit my father, which instead I went to another location, and my father started receiving phone calls from her demanding to know where I was, and my sister said she didn't know, and she was told by Miss Blake that she didn't care about me, she didn't care about Cody.
Don't listen to me. That's all hearsay. I'm asking you what you did.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Ben Brakefield and his wife Jennifer Jesse claim child care provider Carolyn Blake falsely accused him of kidnapping his son.
Mr. Brakefield, you're coming to court today, a man who, because of circumstances, finds himself in a position of having to care for an infant full-time and have a job. You did it with the help of Miss Blake for almost 2 years.
Right.
Then you meet this lady, and I gather from your complaint and from her answer that these two ladies did not get along.
At first they did when I first brought her over to her
Right now,
house.
it may be the first minute. After that, they did not get along. And within a month of the two of you deciding to make a life together, you remove Cody from Miss Blake's custody and don't tell her that you're not coming back. And expect her, listen to me, sir, and expect her to just say, well, I guess he decided to take the boy himself. There you go. And forget about it. And some 3.5 weeks later, sent her a letter outlining why you took him from her custody. I don't think that's right. So
I wasn't sure what her reaction would be, and I didn't want to risk
all you have to do is send her a
being yelled at.
telegram. I've decided to terminate your responsibilities with regard to Cody. I will not be bringing him back. After I return from vacation, I have found another daycare provider, period.
I don't think it would have made a difference in her reaction.
Well, you don't know, but at least you would have done the right thing.
I have several harassing phone calls on my cell phone. She threatened to sue for custody of my son. The time she threatened to call CPS. She called my command on several occasions. There are times that she on several of the phone calls says, I am Cody's mother, and even has a message directly to Cody saying, this is mommy, this is your mother. It's just anybody who's ever read this or heard the messages thinks we did the right thing by getting him out of her care.
Listen to me. I don't necessarily think you did the wrong thing by deciding to resume full-time physical custody of your child. You now had a fiancé who was going to be living with you, so you were in a better position to take care of him. I don't fault you, sir, for removing Cody and deciding to take him back in your full-time charge. I fault you for the method in which you did it. You did it in a heartless fashion. Very heartless. Not only heartless for her, but heartless for your son. He's a 2-year-old child. And the only maternal figure that he's known in 2 years is her. So whether you decide to take him back full-time, you sit down, you have a conversation, and you say, listen, you may like it, you may not like it, but I'm getting married, and I am going to take Cody back. We're going to make a family, the three of us, but I'd like to be able to do this in an orderly fashion. I'd like to be able to bring him to you 3 days a week and then bring him 2 days a week and then down to 1 day a week, and you can always visit him so that the transition for my son would be easier. Do you understand what I'm saying to you, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
If she rejected that, you've at least done the right thing. But you can't do the wrong thing and then come to court and expect me to feel sorry for you because after you did the wrong thing, she called Child Protective Services. What you did was wrong. What you did was abusive to a child who has the only other parent that they know, the one that they're with most of the time, because when you pick him up after work, then he goes to sleep. And that's those days that you're not picking him up because you're going to the gym and taking care of other personal business. Right, according to you.
It's part of my job. It's mandatory. It's a mandatory military regulation that you work out.
Great! What does your 2-year-old son have to do with that? All he knows is the only person that's taking care of him is her.
Yep.
And what you did was precipitously and without any thought to how it was going to impact on him, you removed him from the only family that he knew without a transition. And that, as far as I'm concerned, was abusive. And that, as far as I'm concerned, deserves a call to Child Protective Services and say, what kind of person has this kind of judgment? I'm afraid for the kind of judgment that he is exercising with regard to this 2-year-old. You got my drift? I've raised some children, and I have grandchildren, and you're supposed to take the position as a parent that you're supposed to do what's best for them, the children, all the time. Now, it's best for your girlfriend, but what's best for the child. Not even for what's best for her. She's not the issue. You're grown-ups. He's not a grown-up. He's a baby. And you and your first wife put him in a position. You had bad judgment when you picked wife numero uno. I hope that you had better judgment when you picked numero due. I'm not so sure. But you and your first wife, it was your bad judgment picking somebody who wasn't ready to have a family. It was second poor judgment that you had a baby with somebody that wasn't ready to have a family. You find a caregiver who was given your child, who's kept him safe, fed, clean, because she didn't remove him from her custody for 2 years, so evidently her care could not have been that inadequate, sir. And then when you decide to do it, you do it in a fashion that is not designed to ease the transition. As far as I'm concerned, that's neglectful and very bad judgment. So, did you call Child Protective Services?
Yes, you better believe I did.
Good for you. Your case is dismissed.
Why does that excuse you to step out?
He disappeared from his apartment, the child, everything, and just took the baby and left it. And the child didn't speak for 3 weeks because he wasn't around me.
I have the right to decide who my son's caregiver is, no matter how close he is to that person.
They hurt the baby, 120%.
She just became overly bonded to him.
I would like to see Cody as a regular aunt and uncle would be.
She just can't get it out of her head that you're not Cody's mother.
I am the child's mother, not biologically, but every other sense I was.
Some people just have mental problems and can't differentiate the line between a caregiver and a parent.
I raised him for 21 months. He only came once every other week to get him.
I took my son home every night except Tuesday and Thursday nights.
That's not caring for a child. He didn't pay for diapers.
When she took care of Cody, he had a full crib full of clothes.
Formula, nothing.
He had 5 cans of formula. He was doing okay.
He doesn't have his family anymore.
I am Cody's father, and I am his family.
I just hope that Cody's going to be better, and if I don't see him now, I'll see him when he's 18, and he'll know everything.
Cody's going to do just fine. We already got a college fund started for him, and he's going to have a great future.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Collins versus Batting. Step forward, please.
Nurse Tammy Collins is suing fellow motorist, 25-year-old technician Chris Batting for throwing a bottle at her car. Tammy says Chris was annoyed at the rate of speed she was driving.
Miss Collins, on what date did this incident happen with your car?
This incident happened on May 15th of 2004.
And on what road were you traveling?
I was traveling northbound on Highway 67 on my way to work.
Highway 67 is in what state?
It's in the state of Missouri.
According to what I read in your complaint, you got into some sort of a situation with a truck.
Yes, ma'am.
And you weren't moving fast enough. You were in the left lane. Try to get over to the right lane. You couldn't. Anyway, this truck became exasperated with the way you were driving, culminating in the fact that the person who was driving in that truck threw a bottle, a beer bottle,
yes,
or some sort of bottle, out the window of the truck. It hit your car, causing damage.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is your claim that Mr. Batting was the person who tossed the bottle out of the car, causing the damage to your car. Mr. Batting was stopped some distance away from where this incident happened as a result of you placing a call to the police.
Yes, ma'am.
What did the truck look like?
It was a white and gray Ford F-150.
White and gray.
Yes, ma'am.
Was it new or old?
It was in a 90s model. The distinguishing factor of that truck was that there was a large dog in the back end of it.
Do you remember what the dog looked like?
It was a Rottweiler.
Now, it is your position, Mr. Batting, that you had nothing to do with this incident?
Absolutely not.
Judge Judy continues in a moment and says, fellow motorist Chris Batting threw a bottle at her car while they were driving on the freeway. Chris says she's got the wrong guy.
How long, Mr. Batting, have you lived in the state of Missouri?
All my life.
Now, what county do you live in?
St. Louis County.
What county do you live in?
St. Francis County.
Where were you, in St. Louis or St. Francis County when this incident happened?
We were actually in Jefferson County, which is the county in between the two.
And where was your truck pulled over, sir? Jefferson's?
Jefferson County on Highway 55.
Okay. Let's say that between those three counties, there are, say, 1 million people. Mm-hmm. That be a fair statement?
That's fair.
We're going to, Mr. Batting, play with the statistics and the law of averages a little bit. Of those 1 million people, how many would you say, Mr. Batting, and you could give me an educated guess, sir, and if you get my drift of where I'm going, just smile along any time, sir. How many people do you think who live, 1 million people, have white and gray Ford trucks?
A few hundred, maybe. I don't know.
A few hundred. Let's say 300.
300.
And how many people do you think, of those 300, Mr. Batting, in addition to having a Ford truck, have a Rottweiler?
Maybe half.
That's generous, Mr. Batting.
It could be all of them. I haven't checked.
That's generous. But let me take your figure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say of the 300 people that have a Ford F-150 truck, 150 of them also have a Rottweiler. Now, of the 150 who also have a Rottweiler, how many of them do you think at about 3:15 in the afternoon were riding in their Ford F-150 trucks with their Rottweilers?
How many?
Give me a number.
I didn't see any.
5 people.
5, yeah.
Five, maybe 5 people. Now, of those 5 people riding in their Ford F-150 trucks somewhere in the state of Missouri, in those 3 counties, how many of them do you think were around the area where this bottle got thrown at the plaintiff? Would you say maybe 2?
Maybe 2.
So that what you're saying to me is, since you were driving in a white and gray Ford truck, right?
Yes.
With your Rottweiler in the back of the truck.
Yes.
When you were stopped by the
police,
that there was a 50-50 chance, given your best scenario, that it was somebody else who threw the bottle at her car. That's what you're saying to me?
I don't believe there was a bottle thrown at her car, so I don't know.
Well, just a minute, Mr. Batting. Your answer doesn't question that there wasn't a bottle thrown in her car. You say, I never saw this lady. I wasn't there. I don't know what she's talking about. You don't say we got into a thing with our cars, but I never threw a bottle. You're saying it wasn't me.
Right.
Wrong. Can I see the estimate of the damage to your car?
Yes, ma'am. There's photos here. There's a copy of the police report, which you already have, and also an estimate from a very reputable auto repair facility.
What are you doing driving around in your truck with a dog in the back bed of the car? It's not an answer.
She likes to ride in the back of the truck.
When did she tell you that?
Very often.
I want to know when she told you that. She tells you that often.
Not with words, no.
All right, Miss Collins. I see where there were little chips on the car. I see your estimate. I think you can get the car painted for $1,000, and that's what I'm awarding you, not $3,500. Mr. Batting. Got to hold your temper, sir. Got to hold your temper. Somebody isn't driving fast enough for you. Take a deep breath. Life is short. Do you understand? That's all. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I'm pleased with it. It wasn't really about the money. It was about the safety of other people on the road.
This incident never happened. I don't have any idea what she's talking about. Nothing ever hit her vehicle.
It was rather scary. It could have been bad. I could have rolled the car over.
I guess be careful, you know, watch out who you drive by. Wouldn't drive by her.
I certainly hope people think twice before they react to stressful situations like that.
Appraiser Paul Tumber is suing his ex-wife, Stephanie Sotenko, and her new husband, Ed Sotenko, for a loan to pay her mortgage and for his share of a vehicle.
Now this is case number 420 on the calendar in the matter of Tumber versus Sotenko. Parties have been sworn in, Your Honor. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat.
Mr. Tumber, this is your former wife and her present husband. And the two of you have been divorced for some time. You have a 17-year-old son. I assume that that is this young man over here.
That's
is that
correct.
right? According to the complaint that I've read, recently, after your divorce and after your former wife was remarried, she ran into some financial difficulty and called you and asked you for a loan. You obliged, according to you, advanced her some money, I think $750.
That's correct.
You want the money back.
Correct.
And in addition, your former wife and her husband purchased a car for your son.
Correct.
And you invested some money in that car in repairing it.
Correct.
Then you decided to buy your son a newer car. And according to you, there was an understanding that they would reimburse you when they sold the old car for the money that you had invested in it so that you could sort of put it towards the new car that you were buying from them.
Correct.
They sold the car and they didn't give you the money that you had invested in it.
Correct.
So you also want that money.
Correct.
When did your former wife call you for this initial loan?
It was around the beginning of this year, but around January.
What happened? You ran into some
2004.
financial difficulty?
The financial difficulty wasn't about me necessarily. It was regarding my son and expenses that we had with the car, with medical, and with a phone bill.
What do you mean the car? What kind of expenses?
Okay, the car that we purchased for my son was a car that we knew.
I don't care what you knew. You had expenses because you had to have it fixed?
Yes.
And how much did you need to have the car fixed?
There were different parts that we needed to buy. My husband did the repairs.
So you spent some of the money that he gave you to fix the car?
Correct.
How much?
The total that we spent on the repairs, just the parts alone of the receipts I could find,
yes,
was $224.03.
$224 to fix the car.
For the parts.
Fine. I don't care what your husband's labor was. That's not important to me. What else did you need money for?
My son had a cell bill.
Who bought him a cell phone?
I did.
So why was it your former husband's responsibility?
It wasn't, except for my son went over the minutes, and he did this more than one occasion.
Did your former wife tell you, Mrs. Sotenko, tell you that this money she was asking you for was for your son?
No, Your Honor,
What did she tell you?
It was for mortgages on the home that she was in arrears of.
Were you in arrears on your mortgage?
I was never in arrears on my mortgage.
Did you tell him that you needed money to pay your mortgage?
I told him that I couldn't pay the mortgage and everything else, that my son's cell bill was so much money, my son's medical bills that the insurance didn't cover was so much money.
You pay child support, sir?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
How much do you pay?
Just shy of $600 a month, I believe.
Okay. How much money did you
Your
give?
Honor, that's not true.
How much does he give you?
$370 a month.
How do you account for the discrepancy, Mr. Tumber?
I'm not sure how much I pay, to be honest with you, Your Honor.
So why don't you say, I'm not sure? I don't know is something
Yeah,
that a man
we'll
can say.
I don't know.
3 little words.
I don't know.
Don't know.
Correct, thank you.
Well, you should know how much child support you pay. Do you pay it pursuant to income deduction order? Or
Yes.
So it comes right out of your pay?
Right out of my check, yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's not $600, it's $370 a month, according to you. Is that what you receive, or do you receive more if there is some in arrears?
$370 a month, Your Honor.
Period?
Period.
Okay, fine. How much money did you loan to her, sir?
$750.
Well, that's not true, Your Honor.
Show me.
Your Honor, I'd like to
You have a
submit.
check?
Yes.
Let me see it,
Canceled checks with her signature on them.
Your Honor, he could have written anything in after the fact.
No, I'm just looking at the canceled checks, madam. And I'm even looking for the memo. The memo is irrelevant. You owe him $750. I think it's very nice that you can call him and say, listen, I ran into some financial difficulties and I need some money and your son lives with me, so could you do it for me?
But, Your Honor, that's not how it happened.
Did you sell the car? We're
Yes,
going to get
we
to the
sold the
car
car.
now.
But-
Just a second. We're going to get to the car. You and your husband bought a car, and you bought a car for your son. And according to you, some of the money that you got from him was used to fix the car.
Correct.
Right. Then you sold the car.
Correct.
How much money did you give him?
There-
I just answer my question. How
Zero.
much money did you
Zero.
give him? Zero. How much did you sell the car for?
$1,000.
Well, if he paid for the parts to fix the car, why didn't you think it was appropriate that if he was buying your son a new car, for you not to at least reimburse him for what he had spent? Don't you think that that's appropriate? Fair? Reasonable? If I believe you, Mrs. Satango, if I believe you, you were able to call your former husband and say to him, despite the fact that you are under a court order and paid child support, it's not enough. Because I have some bills that I'm having trouble paying for our son. He went over his minutes on a cell phone that I bought him. That's not his fault. You choose to buy him a cell phone, 17-year-old kid, and he's not responsible enough? That's not his father's problem because you provided him with the vehicle to be irresponsible. But he was, according to you, he was a nice guy and said, here's the money. According to you, he was a nice guy when you say, I had to fix the car and I need some parts. According to you, he was a nice guy, gave you the money. According to you, despite the fact that he pays child support and is not in arrears, he had some unreimbursed medical bills, and he said, here's the money. So I'm asking you, if he was a nice guy, how come when you sold the car and he was buying him a new car, you didn't say, here's the money that you laid out for the parts?
The car was bought because the car that we bought for my son wasn't good enough, wasn't cool enough. They bought the car. I had nothing to do with that, neither did my husband. We have endured financial difficulty. We did not say that we were going to give him the money. It wasn't for my son to barter. It wasn't for him to barter. We paid the mortgage with the money, and that's the circumstance we're under right now.
So why didn't you just say that to me instead of giving me a whole lot of who shot John? You paid the mortgage. You borrowed money from him and paid a mortgage.
I thought you knew that. I'm sorry.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Ex-wife Stephanie Sotenko owes for a loan and for proceeds from the sale of their son's vehicle.
Listen, you're a nice guy and she owes you $750 because I believe it was a loan. Now, you tell me about the contract that you say you had with her with regard to paying you back for the money that you invested in the old car.
Okay, well, the verbal contract was that when the vehicle was sold, that I would recoup the money for the parts for the repairs, which I have canceled checks for right here.
Can I see them, please?
And
who
there
did you
never
make
was
this,
a
who did you make?
I'm sorry?
Who did you make this contract with, sir?
With Stephanie.
Can I say something, Your Honor, or do I need to speak in turn? Or
No, now you tell me.
As far as the car, how many fathers give money toward repairs of their son's car and then ask for it back after the car is sold?
Well, let me tell you what usually happens. Usually, if boy has a car and if he wants a better car, and his parents, they are reasonable, say, listen, we'll sell this car, we'll use whatever money we get from this car, we'll put it towards another car. That's what parents do. What you did was you took money from your former husband, because these are your canceled checks.
I didn't take money toward the
Yes, you did.
Your Honor, I did not ask him for the money for the parts for the car. He willingly gave me that money.
Because he's a nice guy.
So he was a nice guy and
Just
did
a
that
second,
for our son.
Just a second, he's a nice guy.
And
you're supposed to be responsible. You're supposed to be moral. You're supposed to be a moral example for your child. You are not.
I am not?
No, you are not. You are not.
Okay.
Because if he is being a nice guy, what you're supposed to be is a moral example for your son and say, listen, we sold the car for $1,000. You put in practically that. I'm speaking. You put in practically that. I'll be more than happy to give that money towards the new car so that we will jointly, in some way, have contributed to the car that our son is driving. You chose not to do that. You owe him the money for the repairs to the car because I believe you had an agreement, if you sold the car, to give him back that money. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,595. That's it.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
If I had had the money, morally, I would have given the money.
I'm in a financial position. I don't make a lot of money, that I just wanted my funds back.
I didn't really want to be here, but I guess it's the best way to do it.
It's no love lost between my son and I.
Be sure that you know what and who you're dealing with.
Did we learn anything today? I don't really think so.
Attendant Darlene Rao is suing her neighbor, postal worker Raul Cruz, for damaging her fence and pool by throwing rocks. Raul says he was merely returning the rock she dumped on his property.
All rise. This is case number 395 on the calendar in the matter of Rao versus Cruz. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat.
Ms. Rao, you and the defendant are next-door neighbors.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you have adjoining backyards.
Yes.
Adjoining yards. And it is your claim that Mr. Cruz threw some junk into your backyard, and in doing so damaged some of your property. You want him to pay for that property. Mr. Cruz seems to indicate that while he did place some things in your yard,
Yes, ma'am.
he was merely returning the stuff that you had put in his yard.
Correct, Your Honor.
So it sounds to me like you people need something else to do. When did the trouble start, Miss Rao, with Mr. Cruz?
When I saw that the land was eroding, I put rocks there to hold up the land, and Mr. Cruz came out and abruptly said, "What are you doing?" And I told him, I said, "We got a problem here. The land is going down the hill."
I don't understand. Do you have a photograph to show me
Yes,
what you
I do.
mean? I'd like to see it.
That's the photographs of the damage and the
Well, I don't
land.
want to see the damage. I'll take them all. Let me see if I can find what you're talking about. Okay. I'm looking at this picture. Is this the area where you were placing rocks?
Yes.
Okay. On whose property is this?
Mr. Cruz.
So you were placing rocks on Mr. Cruz's property?
Some of it is my property. I was placing it real close to the fence.
Well, you can't place rocks on his property, Miss Rao.
I was placing it on my property.
No, you also said you were placing it on his property. You cannot place rocks on his property. You cannot put anything on his property.
Right. I got his permission. When he came out and abruptly said, "What are you doing?" I told him, and he said, "Fine."
Just a second.
Okay.
Before you do it.
That's not true.
Okay. If that was true, that was very nice of him. But before you step on somebody else's property to make any alterations, you call them and you ask for permission. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, I'll start with you, Mr. Cruz. Why don't you tell me what happened?
November 2nd, we got up and I looked out my kitchen window and I actually could see up the slope to her house. And I saw some garbage, branches, tennis shoe. I see PVC pipe. I see a bucket. Those black ones when the plants come in. I told my wife I'll be right back. I went to her house, knocked on her door to see if she was there. I've cleaned it 3 times
Now,
already.
that's on your property?
Yes, ma'am. It's on my property.
Is this a back part of your property?
Yes, it's a back with a big slope, like maybe 70 feet long.
And on the other side of the property is?
Her fence and the pool.
Okay. So, just a second. So you went over to her house on the 2nd?
Correct.
And nobody answered?
Nobody answered the door, so I went home. I went up the slope. I picked up the black bucket, a couple of root plants, and a couple rocks, and I tossed it over the fence. And that dirt right there that you see was covered all with ice plant. There was no exposure of the PVC pipe. I have a picture, ma'am.
Let me see it, please.
I have a couple pictures. Plus, I also found a rock in my pool. And it's not rock, it's actually cement. Take a look through those. And there's also a picture of a ladder that she uses to climb over my fence. Because she's been in my property. I've seen her 3 times. The last time I saw her, she was just sitting there pulling some ice plants. And I said to my wife, let's just ignore her.
Why were you pulling these ice plants?
I got his permission. I asked him if he would please trim his ice plant because it was going under my fence and getting wrapped up in my vines. And he said he wouldn't. I said, do you mind if I do it? He said it was fine. So I hired a guy to trim his ice plant, and I told him at that time I was going to put rocks there to keep the land from going down the hill, and I was going to put plants there, plants with good roots to hold the soil. I was trying to better the property. I would never, ever, I was afraid of him. I'm still afraid of him. I would
somebody,
never
Miss
put
Rao,
garbage on his place.
Miss Rao, listen to me. Somebody in your house was using part of his property to dump stuff.
No, Your Honor, no.
Well, otherwise, what you're saying
I don't
to
know
me,
where the tennis shoe came from. I don't know. I have no idea where a tennis shoe came from. It was a huge man's tennis shoe. I live in my house by myself. I'm trying to clean up the area.
Okay. Now, I would like you to tell me what kind of damage you allege was done as a result of his throwing this debris over, and I want to see your police report, please.
He did not give a police report.
Well, if you don't have a police report, don't give me anything else.
What is his notice that he came out? I don't know why they didn't do a police report.
I don't know
He told
why.
Ron why he didn't do a police
Who are
report.
you?
My name's Ron Filipponi, Your Honor. I'm Mrs. Darlene's fiance.
Okay.
And I picked up the police report, and the Sheriff's Department did not do a police report on an incident because there was no threats made and there was no physical damage.
Well, that's not true, because I have a police report here indicating that the alleged violation that Mr. Cruz was complaining of was trespassing, dumping onto property, and repeating violations.
Your Honor, anything I did was try to improve the property. I would never, first of all, I'm afraid of Mr. Cruz.
Ms. Rao, you cannot elect to improve somebody else's property.
It was to take care of my property. It's sliding down the hill.
You cannot elect to improve someone else's property.
I'm trying to prevent my land from going down. I was just going to put rock there to save the land.
I'm going to say it to you one more time. You can't do that. It's not your property.
Part of it is.
Part of it may be. The rest of it is his. You can't go on his property and put rocks on his property. You can't do that.
I put the rocks on the property because I didn't want to step on that pipe. I was trying to protect from stepping on the pipe, and then I could stand on a rock and move the, rather than standing on the soil and sliding down.
You can't do that.
And when I was doing that, I waved, he was in the window in the kitchen, and I waved to him, and he waved back.
On my property. She's on my property waving at me.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Lane Rao says neighbor Raul Cruz damaged her fence with rocks. Raul says it's Darlene who's dumping rocks on his property.
Now, I want you to show me what the damage was to your, whatever you say was damaged as a result of his throwing this stuff all the way down here.
Can you have the pictures of what's damaged?
No, I see a lot of schmutz, but I don't see much damage.
Well, this is part of the vase statue of the angel that he broke. This is what came off the chair that I passed it down from my mom to me. And there's a big bench there. You can see the damage to the big bench there.
You have a picture of the bench before?
Yes, I have a picture of the bench right here before.
And I see it.
This is before, and this is after I did the work. This is where all his plants were coming up.
No, I just want to see the picture of the bench.
And the bench is here, and the bench is here. There's all these pictures of the bench.
I also have a picture of her property, and she has like maybe 1.5 feet of white rock. If she wants to do something to prevent it from going down, she could build a retaining wall on that white rock she has.
Listen to me. You can't throw the rocks on her property because you got in a snit.
I was just returning it.
I heard you, Mr. Cruz. I mean, I've tried to explain to this lady who doesn't seem to get it. Maybe you get it. Do you get it?
I get it, Your Honor.
I'm glad you get it. Maybe later, you know, in a quiet moment, you give her a glass of red wine. Maybe you can explain it to her that she cannot go on somebody else's property.
That's sound advice.
It's sound advice,
yes,
right? So you have to stay on your own land. In the meantime, I don't see a picture of this bench that you allege he damaged before.
Can I come up there and show it to you, please?
Sure. Show me a picture. Listen to me. I see this picture. I see this picture of the bench here.
Right.
Damaged. And all I want you to show...
Here's the bench, right here.
I see the bench. I want you to show me a picture of the bench before you say this happened.
There's little snapshots here.
Well, show me.
Sorry, it's far away, but that's the bench.
Listen to me. Listen to me. Pay attention. I can't see anything from this picture. Could you see anything from this picture? The answer is yes or no.
Yes,
Can you see what the bench looked like in this picture?
Yes.
Well, I can't. I can't. Step
I can
back.
see it.
Mr. Cruz, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Sir?
I need it.
You still have a chance. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Good. You can't throw property like you did. And she may be irritating and she may cause you all kinds of problems, but you still cannot resort to that kind of self-help. Listen, Miss Rao, bottom line is you can't put your foot on somebody else's property.
I got permission from him, too, and I swear to God, it's the truth. I will,
Wait,
but I
Miss
got
Rao,
permission from him.
Mr. Cruz, you have $1 in your pocket?
Yes, I do.
Take it out. Bird, take the $1. Give it to Miss Rao. That's your judgment for the damage that he did, Miss Rao. You don't seem to get it. I want you to get it. That's all.
Parties aren't huge. You may step out.
He gave me permission to put the rocks there, and I swear to God, that's the honest to God truth.
I think she's a good person, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we have differences, but let's just get along. We're neighbors.
He's a con man, and for some reason, I'm a victim.
Plaintiff Donna Peterson is suing her grandson, 21-year-old freezer operator Justin Peterson, for an unpaid loan to pay off his legal bills. Justin says not only did he make payments to his grandmother, but he also did work for her.
Your Honor, this is case number 237 on the calendar in the matter of Peterson versus Peterson. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
this is your grandma.
Yes.
Your grandma says that she made some loans to you while you were living with her.
Yes.
Over $3,000?
Yes.
And you say that there was never a loan, and if there was, you gave her some money in cash, and you bartered for some of it by taking care of her and doing her landscaping.
Yes.
When did you go and live with your grandmother?
It was back in February of 2003.
Why?
Well, due to divorce situations with my parents, my dad needed a room so my sisters could live with him, and I had to go.
You weren't having trouble with your father, were you?
No.
So when you realized that you had to find another place to live, did you call your grandmother?
No.
Well, how did it come about that you went to live with her?
I went on my own, and I was in my car for a little bit.
You were in your car?
Yes.
Why were you in your car?
Because I didn't want to beg anyone. I didn't want to ask anyone to do anything.
How were you supporting yourself?
I was going store to store with getting pop cans.
Well, why weren't you working?
I was previously laid off from another job.
How long hadn't you worked?
Since October of '02.
Well, maybe that's why your father told you to get out.
No.
Your grandmother said yes. So your grandmother volunteered to take you in?
I had a cell phone that was about to expire and stuff. She called me on it and was wondering where I was. She didn't want me to... She was basically saying, I don't want you to live on the car. I thought you were going to come live with me. I was like, okay, I will.
Is that what happened?
No, I hadn't had any contact with Justin. Nobody had. And I was very worried about him. And he showed up on my doorstep. I just accepted that he would come and stay with me.
Now tell me about these loans that you claim you made to your grandson.
Okay, he got a job through some friends of mine.
Great. Starting when?
I'm not positive.
February 5th.
Great.
03.
So practically right away.
Yes.
It was before I moved in.
Go ahead.
No, you already lived with me, Justin. Anyway, he owed quite a few bills. His car needed work. He was driving without a license, without insurance, and he was picked up once that I know of, and his car taken away, and I think they took him away too, and his father got him out. So I asked him to make a list of what he owed, and we worked out together what the loan would be. And I have a copy of the original check was $3,500.
May I see it, please? So he sat down and made a list of what all of his bills were.
Yes. And we supposedly paid off everything he owed.
So that was in July of 2003. You paid off all your debts.
Yeah, that I knew of.
Great. How much did you pay back?
I started paying small increments. Work was starting to get unstable. There was one time where I had a layoff period of 6 weeks.
And what did you do during that 6-week period?
I used unemployment, but it was very little, and I was barely holding on to keeping the insurance that I had.
How much rent were you paying to your grandmother?
$200 a month.
Is that right?
Yes. However, the first 3 months, I didn't ask him to pay anything so he could save money to get an apartment.
So how did you pay her back?
For those first 3 months, all the money that I couldn't save, I was putting towards what was being collected upon me from collection agencies, Verizon, and other companies. And I was basically being swallowed and just trying to keep up.
Well, that's why she gave you this $3,500
Yeah,
to
that came 3
consolidate
months
everything
later.
so you could pay it all off and then pay her back regularly in a smaller increment. How much did you pay her back?
Well, I've got records here of what I have paid her.
Can I see it, please?
Yes. This is when I recently got employed, and like agreements we made verbally that I would pay what I can when I could, and at least the minimum.
Well, you have down here $720.
Yes.
And I see that the payments didn't start here until May of 2004.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, that was when I moved to Umatilla for work.
But, Your Honor, also, I got one of the bills, the statements from the credit card company, and there was a $250...
What credit card company? You gave them a check.
Yes, I did, but it's from a Chase Manhattan Bank. It's from a credit card company.
I see. So they took this right off a credit card.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I got a $250 charge on the credit card, and he said that he had a bill that he had overlooked. I had given him a signed check from the credit card company because they send you blank checks.
So he said you would sign the check and gave it to him?
Yes, he did. And
did you?
No, I didn't.
You mean he told you that you would sign the blank check?
Yes. And anyway, I didn't argue with him because he's always right. So I called the credit company and asked them for a copy of the check because I knew I hadn't given him a check and signed it.
Can I see it, please?
It was a check that he had forged. And he had said, well...
Just a second. What do you have to say about that, Justin?
I'd gotten a notice from Verizon for my cell phone that had expired, and I had $350 still left in the bank, and I needed a little extra to do that. I called her on the phone. She was kind of slurring her words, which I figured she'd been drinking, and she said, okay.
So she is correct that you forged her name to the check.
I signed it, yes.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Her grandson, Justin Peterson, owes for a loan to pay his bills. Justin says his grandmother is a drinker.
You forged her name to the check.
Yes, I signed it.
She didn't turn you in, did she?
No.
When did you tell your grandmother exactly how much you wrote out this check for?
Afterwards, she confronted me about it later. I figured she already knew because I'd called her. And
when did you leave your grandmother's house?
Late January, early February of 2004.
Tell me about that.
She was in Palm Springs, and we were having troubles. Every time I'd come home, it was Justin, 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 and I'm just trying to get by.
Justin, what?
She would confront me about, you need to do more, you need to do more, you need to pay more, and it's like, I'm trying. And what we agreed upon was making at least the minimum as long as there wasn't a negative mark.
Well, you hadn't paid anything, Justin. You showed me what you paid. You hadn't been paying anything. Not a minimum, not anything, for months.
I had also done work for her, which she agreed upon.
So tell me about that, Justin.
Well, she was complaining about the lawn. I offered, Grandma, since I'm not able to get you as much, I could do the lawn for you. I could have it done in one day.
Try not to look at the walls, Justin. Try to look at me when you're testifying.
I'm just recalling, Your Honor.
Well, try to recall while you're looking at me.
Okay. Well, I was trying to find ways.
No, you're right. Are you cross-eyed?
No.
Then look at me.
I was trying to get the balance covered and stuff, and I knew I was getting close to missing more. And I went to
right here,
I
Justin.
went to a friend. I was just overlooking this.
You don't have to look at anything. Tell the truth. You should be able to remember it.
I am.
Okay.
I went and purchased a bunch of sod. My buddy had come over too, Chris.
What month was this in, Justin?
I don't remember the exact month.
Well, I
it was
would
like
like
July
you to...
or August.
Of what year?
Of 2003.
I want you to think about whether it was July or August of 2003.
I just remember it was a really hot day.
And what you're telling me, Justin, is you had fallen behind in the payments.
I was coming close to, yes.
But previous to that, you had made the payments.
Yes.
How many payments had you made previous to that?
Well, I'd given her bigger amounts of money, like $200, $250. One time she wrote, well, I gave her the checks. And
So that was before you were doing the landscaping?
Yes.
All right, now let me explain something to you, Justin, my dear. According to what you just said to me, and I want to make sure that I'm getting this right, Officer Byrd, Justin says that he did some work for his grandmother in order to pay off his debt to her. Some landscaping work in July or August of 2003. He said that previous to that, he had been up to date in his payments. That's what you said.
Yes.
That's what he said. My problem with that, Officer Byrd, could you just take a look at this check and tell me the date of the check of his grandmother's for $3,500?
7/10/2003.
So what you're telling me, Justin, is before your grandmother gave you this check for $3,500 in mid-July of 2003, you started paying the credit card company back? Is that what you're telling me?
I made a plural mistake, yes.
You made a big mistake! Because you may be trying to get over on me that something's wrong with your grandmother's mind, but I got news for you. Nothing is wrong with mine. And certainly nothing is wrong with Officer Petrie Hawkins Byrd. So when somebody lends you money and someone extends themselves, puts money on a credit card so that you can have a clean slate, because that's what your grandmother did, you don't turn around and kick them in the behind by standing there and telling a whole bunch of lies. Do I make myself clear?
Yes.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,200. That's all. Get out.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I'm not mad at my grandson. I'm hoping this will help him to mature and be responsible for himself.
I tried being good with my grandma. I did have problems.
The world doesn't owe you a living. You've got to pay your way.
Trying to look like a saint who got screwed.
I hope that it helps him to mature and be responsible for himself.
26-year-old child care provider Laura Burton is suing her ex-husband, 29-year-old machinist Donald Allen, for the return of her son's belongings. Donald is countersuing for car payments and insurance costs.
It's case number 48 on the calendar in the matter of Burton versus Allen. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Folks have seats.
Miss Burton, when were you and Mr. Allen married?
We got married in April of 2001.
And at the time you were married, you had a child, a boy. Is that right?
I already had him, yes.
From a previous marriage or relationship?
Relationship, yes, ma'am.
And how old was that child when you married Mr. Allen?
9 months.
And where is the father of that child?
He lives in the state of California. At the time, he lived in the state of Utah with me.
Does he support the child? Does he support the child?
Right now, no.
Last year, did he support the child?
Yes.
The year before?
Yes.
And the year before?
Yes.
And how much support was he sending for the child?
He paid $167 a month.
So not much.
Not much.
Not enough to support the child.
No, ma'am.
When you married Mr. Allen, were you working?
Yes, ma'am.
Continually employed?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was watching the baby?
The biological father was watching him.
And that remained throughout your marriage to Mr. Allen, that the biological father was watching the baby while you were working?
At the point when me and Mr. Allen got married, I had put him in daycare.
And you continued to be employed?
There were points that I did become unemployed.
Large stretches of time?
No. Maybe the longest stretch were 6 months.
And during that 6-month period, Mr. Allen supported the household?
Yes.
Supported you and your son?
Yes.
Okay. When were you married, Mr. Allen?
April 25th, 1998.
To her?
Yeah.
Why did she say April 2001?
I don't know. My son was born in 97, so.
You mean the baby?
Yeah, the baby.
Is that right?
Yes.
So that you made a mistake. You were
Yes,
married
ma'am.
in 1998.
Yes, ma'am.
And when did you separate?
It was the end of August, September of 2002.
And when were you divorced?
October 4th, 2002.
Do you have any children together?
No.
So this is what this case is about. Miss Burton is suing you for the return and or value of property, the child's property, child's clothes, games, sporting equipment, etc., etc. That was at your house. Because even after the divorce, you were exercising visitation with him. You coached his ball league.
Up until problems happened. So.
Whatever it was, but you were involved with him, so you kept some things at your house. Did he sleep at your house
Yes,
occasionally
Your
during
Honor.
visitation?
He actually lived with us from March until July.
March of what year?
2003.
Why was that?
His mother was unable to find a place to live.
For that 4 months he lived with Mr.
That is
Allen?
incorrect, Your Honor.
How long did he live with Mr. Allen?
Until May.
So he lived with Mr. Allen for 2 months?
Yes, ma'am.
According to you. But since the separation, since you were living together, Mr. Allen has had regular contact with the boy. What's
Yes,
his
ma'am.
name?
His name is Tyler.
And I would assume that Tyler is attached to Mr. Allen.
In a way.
And your lawsuit wants Mr. Allen to return all of these things. Mr. Allen says, I bought them, and they're staying in my house.
Mm-hmm.
I also gather from reading your complaint and his answer that you have decided it's no longer appropriate for Tyler to spend time with Mr. Allen.
It's become unhealthy.
It's become unhealthy because why?
The constant bickering between Mr. Allen and I had told him that it needed to stop. It was becoming unhealthy for everyone in the situation. I gave him a year that I continuously said, we cannot be bickering. We need to stop. Something needs to change.
Bickering about what?
Just little things, mainly my son. He was trying to run my household for me. And
who is this person?
This is my current husband, Brian.
When were you married?
We got married in November of 2003.
Tyler is 7 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
And what you're telling me, Ms. Burton, is that you have decided to cut off the only constant male relationship in your son's life because you couldn't get along with Mr. Allen.
Not only that I couldn't get along with Mr. Allen, but my son is fearful of this man.
I'm not interested in whether you say your son is fearful. I don't believe it. I don't believe if your son is fearful of him, you let him stay there for 2 months while you were trying to find a new place to live. That's baloney. Don't believe it. Not for a second. Anyway, she stopped all contact. Is that right?
Yes, she did.
And you have this property that you purchased.
Yes. Can I explain something real quick?
Go ahead.
When we were divorced, we agreed to split his stuff for her home and our home. Everything she bought stayed at her house. Everything we bought stayed at our house. And after she got pregnant the first time, she claims that I was going to let her have the baby clothes or use the baby clothes that I got in the divorce that she said I could have.
What do you mean after she became pregnant the first time? What does that
Well,
mean?
the first time, because she had a miscarriage about a year ago.
That's with her present husband?
No.
With you?
No.
With who?
Boyfriend at the time.
Okay. Go ahead.
And then she asked for the clothes when she became pregnant now. And I told her no. And I came to the point where I've done so much.
Mr. Allen, you don't have to explain it to me any further. Mrs. Burton, I don't know how to put this to you. You have one child, you're expecting another. You've got a new husband. Before this new husband, you had a boyfriend with whom you were intimate and got pregnant. I mean, so your life has been up and down, and before that, you had the father of your 7-year-old who you weren't married to. So the only constant that your son has known in 7 years has been this man. When you are a parent, you are not supposed to be a selfish baby.
Ma'am,
I'm speaking. Now, unfortunately, the law does not permit Mr. Allen, who is not related to this child by blood, to seek visitation with him in most jurisdictions. It doesn't mean that he can't sue for custody of this child, because anybody can sue for custody of a child if they believe that the biological parent has so abused or neglected that child as to make it dangerous, emotionally and or physically, for the child to live with that parent. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Which means in most jurisdictions he cannot file for visitation, but if you become a worse mother than I believe that you are, he can file for custody. It is the wrong thing to do to cut off for your son a relationship with this man, which is the only constant he has known for 7 years because of your moving around.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. And later today, ex-husband Donald Allen owes for the return of her son's belongings. Donald claims Laura owes for car payments.
Now, not only aren't you getting the stuff back, but I'm telling you that you better watch your back, because should you do anything that places this child in either physical or emotional damage, he's going to be there.
Ma'am.
And while you may not consent to visitation because you got your nose out of whack, because I believe what he says when he says, she said to me, I'm going to lay down the rules. If you want to see him, I'm going to tell you what the rules are. That sounds like something you would say. And what you're doing is not considering the best interests of your child. And when you don't do that, you're not being a good parent. You're not getting the property back. He bought it for his stepson to stay at his house. Unfortunately, when the marriage was terminated, so was the relationship, the legal relationship of stepchild, step-parent. That you know.
I know.
That you know. And there were other things, Mr. Allen, that you could have done.
I know.
During the marriage, you could have discussed adopting him. That was a possibility. I don't know whether his biological father would have consented to that or not. The law doesn't keep up with the dynamics of our new world. And our new world is that sometimes children become very attached to their step-parents, and it's very unfair for the biological parent to use that as a sword. It's clear to me that there was a time when Mrs. Burton was very, very happy to have you fill in for her son to live with you for either 2 months or 4 months while you were in between residences. That was convenient. It no longer is convenient. I'm sorry. You don't get anything back. That's all. Step out.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
It's kind of upsetting. All my son wanted was his personal belongings that are there now.
So many things are put into this little boy's head, like his daddy's abandoned him.
He's the victim. I mean, I have to go home and disappoint him again.
We were best friends. There was no other way around it. Best friends with each other. We did everything together.
I'm thinking of the best interest of my child.
I love you no matter what happens or what anybody says. Your daddy loves you.
And now the next case. Daycare provider Angel Barfield is suing her sister-in-law, Delinda Walker Linder, for the return of money she paid towards a car. Delinda is countersuing for lost wages and emotional distress.
Now, this is case number 46 on the calendar in the matter of Barfield versus Walker Linder. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have a seat, please.
Miss Barfield, is this your sister-in-law?
Yes, it is.
And is that your brother?
Yes, it is.
According to your complaint, your sister-in-law and or your brother had a car. And about 9 months ago, you made an agreement with them that you would take over the car payments because they were having some difficulty making the car payments or hadn't made the car payments.
That's correct.
And at the end of the period, the car would be yours.
That's correct.
You did, in fact, take over the car payments. I believe you said it was last August.
That's right.
And from last August until recently, you made the car payments faithfully.
Yes.
And then your sister-in-law and or your brother repossessed the car, took it back.
Yes.
And you are suing them because you want all the money you put into the car payments, the repairs, and the tags on the car.
Right.
Your sister-in-law says, and I don't know if your brother's speaking too, but certainly your sister-in-law says that in addition to your agreement with regard to the car payments, you were also responsible to pay for the insurance on the car.
And that is correct.
It was their insurance. The money came out of their bank account automatically, and it was your obligation to pay them in cash. I think it was $70 a month for the insurance, and you fell behind in making your payments to her for the insurance, and that's why she repossessed the car.
That is not correct.
Just a minute.
That is correct.
That's
No,
what she
that's
says.
not.
Shh, just a second. I'm just telling you that's what she says.
Okay.
All right. So, what kind of car is this?
It was a 1999 Jeep Cherokee Laredo.
When did you start to make payments on the car?
I started making payments in August of 2003.
And what were the payments each month?
Each month it was $424 a month.
And how many car payments did you make?
From the time of August all the way up until March. And then I also made an extra car payment in July that they didn't make because they were behind in.
Now tell me about the insurance. How did you pay the insurance?
I paid the insurance along with the car payment.
And you paid that in check or cash to your sister-in-law?
Well, I started paying it by cash. Then my husband kind of got uncomfortable with it, so he wanted me to go ahead to a point where we could have it automatically withdrawn from our checking account. In order for us to do that, we had to catch up the current months that they were behind, that they were supposed to have paid for July's payment.
Who notified you that they were behind July's payment?
My brother and her told me that they were behind when I got the truck.
And was there ever any discussion about how you were going to be credited for this $424?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the discussion?
The discussion was that if I was making up the car payment, that they would pay me back.
Oh, well, that sounds fair.
That's not true, though.
Well, whether it's not true or not, it sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
Because I have here.
Doesn't it sound reasonable?
No, it does not, because of the fact that when we gave her the car, when we subleased it to her, we told her that we were behind on one payment. The only reason why we was because I was pregnant and
I don't care whether you were pregnant with quadruplets. Listen to me very carefully. You drove the car in the month of July.
Yes.
You should have made July's payment. You did not make July's payment. It seems to me most reasonable that if she is going to catch up with July's payment, there should be some sort of a credit somewhere for her.
Right, Your Honor, but we didn't ask her to pay that. She volunteered to pay that.
Just a second. The car would never be paid off if nobody made July's payment, madam.
That's true, but we never told her that we would pay that amount back.
Listen to me very carefully. She says you did. You say you didn't. And I'm saying I have to make a judgment as to whether or not it's common sense for you to be responsible for a car that you drove for the month of July and you didn't pay for. Or is it common sense for her to be responsible for the month of July for a car that she had no use of? And listen to me carefully. Common sense suggests that it is your responsibility to pay for a car that you used, and that is irrespective whether you're pregnant or he's pregnant or anybody else is pregnant. It doesn't make any difference.
That was the case.
What?
We called the car company, and we had an arrangement with the payment. That
But
we
they
would
never
pay
made
extra.
the payment.
I don't. Listen to me.
Okay.
If you do that again, I'm going to dismiss your case. You don't want that to happen. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
I had called the car company and told them that we're going to be behind because my wife had just had a baby. So we knew that we had 2 vehicles, and we wanted to get rid of one so we could be down to 1 car payment.
What your reasoning
But
is,
we
sir.
made an agreement with the company that we would pay extra each month to make up the back payment, which we were doing. So she didn't have to pay that on her own.
Just a second. Show me that you made the car payment for July. And if you didn't make the car payment for July, just tell me that so you don't waste my time, because I get very irritated if you waste my time.
Well, the July payment had passed. We were making up the payments on...
Just a second. How much did you make in extra payments for July? Since she took the car over in August.
She only paid an extra payment of $254.76.
Fine. Good. Perfect. So she made, I'm assuming...
Not a total payment.
Listen to me.
I had paid that up.
Are you watching my mouth?
Yes.
Let us assume that she paid $254. Let us assume I credit what you're saying as truthful. Your excuse for repossessing the car is that she missed 4 insurance payments of $70 each.
Yes.
$280. Right?
Yes.
Less 254 is $26. That means that after the thousands of dollars over 9 months that she put into the car, you repossessed the car for $26. And that is entirely unreasonable and unconscionable.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Jill says her sister-in-law, Delinda Walker Linder, leased a car to her and then repossessed it for no reason.
All right. So what I'm telling you is you fell behind in July's payment.
We were already
you did
behind
not.
when she took over the lease.
I'm saying that to you, madam.
She knew that.
Listen
She had
to
an
me.
option whether to go with that or not.
Listen, it's gone beyond the point where you're answering me. I heard what you said. You are being totally unreasonable. And you, sir, if you agree with her, are being totally unreasonable. She put thousands of dollars into this car based upon your agreement, and for $26, you allowed your wife to repossess it and to cause problems in your family. That makes you a fool.
No, it doesn't.
No.
I put thousands of dollars
no.
into the car before she got the car.
Just a second, sir. It was your choice to enter into an agreement with your sister. And if you felt at the end of almost a year that you had made a bad bargain, that's too bad. And for you to have allowed your family to fall into disarray over $26 makes you a fool. Do you understand me? I'm not listening. Listen to me. I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you anymore. You are finished. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,816. Get back.
So now, didn't you? Yeah, you did. Whatever. Back to Omaha, you know it.
You know the deal.
She just got exactly what she deserved, trying to play with the big dogs, and just got crushed today.
Don't trust your family members, especially those who have to go out and buy bags of hair to appear on national TV.
Sometimes you just got to leave family alone that don't want to be a part of the family they have. So let them stay with the bad dogs, and that's just where she's at.
She's just jealous. And we're riding home in our brand new 300 Chrysler. Thank you very much. 2005. Peep.
Hair costs.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge. Case number 2022, Greniger versus Intel.
Thank you. Mr. Greniger, how long have you and the defendant been friends?
I've known Sean probably maybe 3 or 4 years now.
From where?
He lives about 3 blocks away from me. I've met him through another friend that told me he worked on his vehicles before.
You did mechanical work?
Yes.
What kind of business are you in?
Construction, you name it, anything construction.
And you have a couple of trucks?
Yes.
How many?
I have one commercial vehicle and then I just have a Chevy Avalanche.
The commercial vehicle, would you describe it to me? That's the one he was supposed to work on?
Yes.
Describe it to me, please.
It's a 16-foot box truck.
How old?
A 97.
1997.
Yes, ma'am.
It's as old as Sarah. And I suppose it needed a little work.
Yes.
And you took it to your friend.
Yes.
Did you drive it over there to his house 2 or 3 blocks away? Did you have it towed over to his place?
We had to have it towed over there. It was operable before.
But you had it towed?
Yes.
Yeah. And what month and year did you have it towed there?
I believe this started in June of 2020.
And Mr. Rantel, you looked at it and you determined it needed a new engine.
Well, I looked at it. Actually, I did some work prior to that. The intake manifold gasket was...
You mean before June of 2020?
Yes.
And then the truck was running? Then he took back...
Running very crappy.
So it was not running well even after you fixed it?
After I put the intake gasket on, I had it started, it made the same noise. We decided to put an engine in it.
Okay, so it wasn't working after the initial work you did on it?
No.
Decided to put an engine in it. How much was it to work on the engine?
He gave me a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there. It was not all in one lump sum.
How much did he give you?
It was 100 here once, 100 twice, a couple different times, you know.
How much money did you give him?
800.
How much did you quote him for the whole job?
1,000.
So he gave you 800, and according to the papers that Mr. Greniger filed, he also purchased an engine.
Yes.
And this was in June of 2020.
I didn't get the motor at my house.
That you purchased the engine?
Yes.
What was it?
January 7th, 2021.
Okay, so the truck sat on his property for 6 months.
Yes.
Before you got the engine, which was needed to fix it.
Yes. He said it was the intake plenum.
Was that in June of 2020?
Yeah, that's when it began. That's the whole...
Okay. When did he tell you that you needed an engine? In what month? Do you recall?
That was in January.
So the truck sat there, and finally you told him that it needed a new engine, but it was already sitting there for months.
I told him like 2 or 3 months prior to that.
Okay, so it was sitting there for 3 months or 4 months?
Yes.
And he'd already paid you the $800?
He gave me a little bit here and there, yes.
They already paid you the $800 towards the $1,000. So this is what the case is about. The truck has never been fixed. He doesn't have the engine anymore. He scrapped the engine, according to him. Yes. So you want what you paid for it, the engine.
Yes, Your Honor.
First of all, Mr. Ransell said, well, he worked on another truck for you, a smaller truck, and so that ate up the $800. And you didn't come for the engine, and finally he just sold it for scrap. Mr. Rantel, were you very busy during this period of time?
Not really, no.
Well, could you tell me why it took 3 months for you to tell him that he needed a new engine?
He knew after I put the plenum gasket back on. I called him on the phone.
What month?
It had him in November, right before Thanksgiving.
So at the end of November. So you had the truck since June. June, July, August, September, October. You had the truck 6 months. Could you tell me why?
Why? I had problems with it. I couldn't get the bumper off. I couldn't do none of that.
Well, but that's your responsibility. You undertook a job.
Yeah, I took the job because he was supposed to help me, and he never did.
He was supposed to help you put in the new engine?
Help me get the bumper off, and then I had problems with the city of Brooklyn Center.
No. He was supposed to help you get the bumper off, and because you couldn't get the bumper off, help you work on another car for him that you gave money to?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why he's here.
Yep.
Okay. In what month and year did you fix this other car?
January
of 2021.
2022.
So in January 2022, the truck was where?
The Avalanche.
The big one?
At his house, at Mike
And
Greniger's.
he brought you another truck?
Yes.
Which other truck did he bring you in?
The Chevy Avalanche.
The big truck, the commercial truck, is now back at his house?
Yes.
And it went back to his house because they were going to tow it from the city?
Yes.
And you say in January, he then brought you a different truck?
Yes, of 2022.
That you worked on?
Yeah, completed it.
Just a second. Do you recall that, sir?
No, it's not exactly how it went.
Did you, in January of 2022, did you bring him, you had the big commercial truck back at your house because it had to be moved.
Yep.
You hadn't gotten your $800 back?
Nope.
And he still had the engine?
Yep.
In January of this year?
Yep.
So, yep is not an answer, yes is an answer. So, why, sir, under those circumstances, would you bring him another car to fix? You have a driver's license?
It's currently suspended.
How long has it been suspended, Mr. Gruniger?
About a year now.
Now, why is that? Have you had accidents in the past? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, serious ones. Yes.
Michael Gruniger claims truck mechanic Sean Ansel owes for a truck engine and repair costs. Sean is countersuing, claiming Michael filed a false police report against him.
Now, you hadn't gotten your $800 back?
Nope.
And he still had the engine?
Yep.
In January of this year?
Yep.
So, yep is not an answer, yes is an answer. So, why, sir, under those circumstances, would you bring him another car to fix?
Because then I had absolutely no transportation. I needed something to work.
Just a second. You have a big truck, you had a little truck. So the big truck is now immobile, it's at your house. And the only...
Yes.
And he worked on it?
Yes.
Because it was inoperable?
No, it was operable, but he told me that...
Not he told you. You didn't bring it to him because he told you you were having trouble with it.
Yes.
What kind of trouble were you having with it?
There was a grinding
Oh,
sound.
that's a big deal. Grinding sound.
Yes.
What parts did it need?
Well, he told me it was the transfer case.
Did he fix your truck?
Eventually, but it was the rear end.
Just a second. Eventually, did he fix, take your hands out of your pockets, did he fix the truck? The second one? The smaller one?
Yeah.
The one that you needed for
Yes,
transportation?
eventually, yes, he did. He put in a rear end.
Okay. Did you pay him for that?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
How much did you pay for that?
$300.
How long did he have it?
Oh, he did that within about a week.
2 days.
2 days. Okay. So it took you 2 days?
Yes.
Did you give him a bill for that work?
I didn't give him nothing, just a word of mouth.
He says that he gave you $300 to fix that car. Did he give you $300 to fix that car?
No, he did not.
Okay, do you have any proof?
$600 altogether.
Just a second. Would you please show me any proof that you have that you gave him $300 to fix that car?
I don't have proof of the money that I gave him. I just have the receipt.
He doesn't got it.
Shh.
Okay.
I just have the receipts for the parts that I bought for the vehicle.
Okay.
He first said it was the transfer case. I buy a transfer case.
Doesn't matter. He's working, so...
Yeah, but I paid him to do something. He took something apart of the truck. It wasn't even the problem. But yet I still paid him for it.
But this, quite honestly, I don't
and
understand.
And then I paid him for the rear end, too.
I don't understand a couple of things.
Okay.
If I've been disappointed by a workman, as you clearly were, from June 2020 until January 2022, because they hadn't completed a job for you, despite the fact that you purchased the part, I wouldn't call that same mechanic back. I wouldn't call that same plumber back. I wouldn't call that same electrician back because I'd had a bad experience with them. So it's kind of... Yeah. Well, so why?
Felt like I was in, in a tight spot, and I really couldn't
What kind of
afford.
tight spot were you in? Where do you live?
I live in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, that's a big town. There are lots of mechanics there. There are lots of auto repair, truck repair.
Yeah, but I really financially couldn't afford legitimate.
Well, that's what happens when you deal with a legitimate. But I don't understand why an otherwise intelligent man would take his only semi-operating vehicle to the same person who had his truck for a year and didn't fix it. Listen, what'd you do with his engine?
I scrapped it.
Okay. Don't be mad at me.
Huh?
Don't be mad at me.
I'm not. I love you.
Okay, good. Thank you. When did you scrap it?
The end of April of 2022.
Did you give him any notice that you were going to scrap his engine?
No, I did not. There's a false police report made against me.
Okay.
I have the case number and the officer's number.
Okay, just a sec. So you retaliated because that's your counterclaim, that he filed a false police report, as a result of which, and the false police report said that during the course of a heated argument about this truck, that he says that you pulled a gun and...
Did not.
Filed a police report.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
So?
You did.
Prove it. You can't.
Mr. Rantel. And that's your counterclaim, that he filed this false police report and nothing ever came of it except you were embarrassed by being questioned by the police in front of family members.
Yes.
And as a result of that false police report, you threw away his motor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, you can't do that. That you can't do. How much did you pay for the motor, sir?
$690 plus I paid $100 for delivery of the motor.
I'd like to see the invoice for that.
I got the invoice for the motor, but
That's
not...
all I need.
Okay.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mantell, so that we're clear, you have to understand you can't get even by selling somebody else's property.
I didn't
What you
sell
do?
it. I didn't sell it. I gave it away.
It doesn't matter. By disposing of. Let's make it disposing of. When you say you scrapped it, you mean nobody gave you $10 for it?
Not a dime.
Okay, then you can't give it away in retaliation.
Why
for
not?
filing. I'm speaking. You cannot sell someone else's property in retaliation for them doing something to you when you have legal recourse. Your legal recourse is to come here and file a case. You did it as a counterclaim and say he filed a false police report against me that I was using a gun. So that's what you do. The response to that isn't, I'm going to sell his property. That's not your response. You know, when I used to sit in family court, I had young people, one of whom was selling drugs for a very long time, heavy drugs. Kid, 15, 16 years old. And he had 6 or 7 priors for selling heavy-duty drugs. And I tried that case, and there was no question he was selling drugs. And his lawyer's argument at the disposition stage of that case was he was selling drugs because his grandmother died. I said, I lost all my grandparents, and I was close to my grandparents. I did a lot of things. I grieved, lost my appetite for a while. I was sad, but I didn't sell drugs. So when somebody does something to you that you believe is against the law, your responsibility is you file a case against them.
Right.
You proceed legally against them. You don't take it out in another way, because that doesn't make a civilized society. Just doesn't. That makes sort of a vigilante kind of thing. So you shouldn't do that. So you have to pay him for his engine. Now, as far as the second piece of your case is the $800 that you gave him, I have no idea how much it was to fix your second car, but he did in fact fix it. And since you had no particular agreement with him on how much it was, and according to you, you couldn't deal with someone, you didn't have the funds to deal with someone who was, I think the word was legitimate.
Legitimate.
That's a problem that I can't resolve for you. Now let's get to this argument and his counterclaim. The argument that you had was over the truck.
The white truck? Yes.
Any truck. I don't care what.
Yes.
I'm not a truck girl myself. I like 4-door comfortable sedans. And this argument took place on what date? Why don't you tell me, Mr. Rantel?
Yes, the police were called. They showed up at my place.
No, the police report is 7/25/22.
7/25/22.
May I see the police report?
Yes, ma'am. Your Honor.
That's a lie, because it was April.
I'm going to look at it. Just a second. Yeah, time of occurrence, April 22nd, 2022. It was April.
Yeah.
Yes, I got him.
You don't need a truck, you don't need a car. You have no driver's license.
No, ma'am. Me and my son, we work construction together. He drives.
Do you know how old I am? Do you have any idea how old I am? You think that I believe that? It's only going 4 miles an hour.
Michael Griniger is accusing truck mechanic Sean Antle of wrongfully selling his engine and threatening him. Sean claims Michael accused him of flashing a gun he never owned.
Now, I'm going to look at it. Just a second. Yeah, time of occurrence, April 22nd, 2022. It was April.
Yeah.
Yes, I got him.
You have a driver's license?
It's currently suspended.
How long has it been suspended, Mr. Griniger?
About a year now.
What were you doing driving a vehicle?
I wasn't. They were towing the vehicle with a tow chain.
I understand that. But you drive a vehicle, sir.
I was steering the vehicle.
What does that mean, you were steering the vehicle?
Driving it.
The vehicle
Just-
moving at 4 miles an hour.
I don't care if it was running backwards. I just asked you. You have no license because according to the police, you having a driver's license would be inimical to public safety. That's what it says here. Now, why is that? Have you had accidents in the past? Yes.
Yes.
Serious ones? Yes. Okay. You don't need a truck, you don't need a car. You have no driver's license.
No, ma'am. Me and my son, we work construction together. He drives.
Do you know how old I am? Do you have have any idea how old I am? You think that I believe that? I was only going 4 miles an hour. I will set the rules of what it is that means driving. You go 5 miles an hour, it's really not
He lives
driving.
3 blocks away from him. We were just
I don't care.
towing it down the street.
I don't care. Whether you were in the kitchen, he was in the laundry room. And when you spoke to the police, Mr. Griniger, there were 2 other witnesses. And you called
Yeah,
the
I
police
didn't know
lights.
his last name.
And you wouldn't give them your son's name because you say he doesn't like police.
And that I want to make straight. That is not true. I would not tell a police officer my son
It should be
doesn't
noted
like
that
police.
Griniger stated that Michael Jr. would not give a statement because he didn't like police,
Right.
as well as
That's
Griniger
not
would
true. My
not
little
give a
brother's
phone
a
number
police
for Michael
officer.
Jr. I'm just telling you, I'm reading you what
I know, I'm
what
sorry.
you handed me. It's your evidence.
Yep, I'm sorry.
Okie dokie. Did you make an application, Mr. Griniger, for any sort of protective order against him?
No.
No. You were advised by the police that you could do that if you wanted to.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, that report is interesting.
It was you, your son, and this person, Kyle, who were present, and only Mr. Antel. Is that right, when this confrontation took place?
Yes.
And according to you, you got out of your truck and you started walking towards him aggressively. That's according to you.
That's not
according.
true. He's 40 feet away from me.
No.
I can't hear that well.
According to you, I'm reading you what your police report says, sir.
Yeah, but
I'm reading what your police report says based upon what you told the police at the time back in April.
it's not entirely correct.
Griniger stated that he started advancing towards Antel. Griniger also stated that he called Antel you while he was walking towards him. It should be noted that Griniger stated, and this is all on body cam, that he was walking towards Antel aggressively. Griniger stated that Antel then pulled what he described as a black handgun out of his sweatshirt pocket. He described it as black and silver trim. He stated that he did not point it or say anything, just showed it to him to make you aware that he was carrying. And after the police interviewed both of you and confirmed the 2 people with you were out and you were walking and confronting him aggressively, called his names, and could not confirm the fact that he had a gun, took out a gun, not pointed it to you, just showed you that he had it, they decided to do nothing.
Right.
Okay, so, Mr. Rantel.
Yes.
What happened after that report is that police officers came to your house to ask you about that.
Yes.
Right? And you said, related practically the same thing that Mr. Griniger did to the police, that he approached you, that he called you a name, that he was aggressive. You said all of that.
Yes.
But you said you did not have a gun.
That's right.
Okay. And this is not meant to hold you criminally responsible for anything. Mr. Antel, have you ever had possession of a gun?
No.
Ever in your life?
No.
Did you ever purchase a gun?
No.
In your state, in order to purchase a gun legally, do you have to go through a process or is it a carry state?
You gotta go through a legal process.
You have to?
Yes.
Okay. Were you ever arrested for carrying a gun?
No.
Other than your statement that he showed you that he had a gun, and how far was he standing from you?
About 40 feet.
40 feet away. And you saw him take something out of his sweatshirt pocket.
He didn't remove it out of his pocket. He removed his hand covering it.
What does that mean?
It was in his pocket. He was wearing a hoodie.
How do you know it was in his pocket? What do you have, X-ray vision?
No, my son seen it because his vehicle was right alongside his vehicle. So my son seen it, and then when he got back in his car and pulled up another 10 feet and got out of his car, turned around and said, yeah, bring it, and a few expletives, and then pulled his hand out of his hoodie pocket and revealed the handle of the gun.
Just a second. So you're saying at that time you saw it?
Yes.
You saw it, not your son
My
40
son
feet away,
seen it on
not
the
son
seat
40
of his
feet away.
car.
That's
Okay.
a lie.
But
And
you
then he
saw
reached in and grabbed it and put it in his sweater because when he got back out of the car to face me is when he decided to show me he had a gun.
Okay. Were you out of your truck at the time?
Yes, I was standing beside
Okay,
him.
so you were out of your truck. And what about your son? Was he out of the truck?
Nope.
He was in. What about Kylie?
He remained in the truck too. He was the one in front pulling the truck that I was steering, and he was following behind. It was a little convoy.
And Mr. Rantel was by himself?
Yes. He was driving down the street in the opposite direction.
Mr. Rantel, I am not satisfied, quite frankly, and cannot make a determination. You even moved your hand in your pocket to demonstrate maybe you had a weapon. I don't find that the acts that you allege that he committed by filing this false police report is something that I can justify giving you a financial award for Because I'm not so sure that you didn't have something in your pocket.
I didn't have
I'm not sure. In any event, Mr. Rantel, you owe him for the engine that you discarded in a peak. You can't do that. Cost of the engine was $590, right? $590. Judgment for the plaintiff.
Ma'am,
We're finished.
Your Honor.
We're
Court
done.
is adjourned.
I was kind of in a hard spot. I needed my truck fixed.
Try to push me and push me.
I trusted him.
It didn't work today. I won.
Truck is inoperable. It's sitting in my backyard.
I worked for what he gave me.
So I really couldn't afford, like I said, a legitimate shop or a mechanic.
I've never owned a pistol.
Yeah, he's lying.
Basically, if I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight with my bare hands.
Don't do anything without any receipts.
Our friendship is through.
It's really hard when you have two difficult people, but there was something about what he said that had the ring of truth to it.
Very honest.
A directness. And I'm really not convinced. Were you?
No, I wasn't either.
That he had a gun.
It could have gone either way, and while I believed his outburst of innocence, I couldn't imagine making something like that up, but maybe that's just me. So it was really difficult. I don't think I could have made a determination either way either.
Yeah, and I think the answer is here. If you can't make a decision one way or another, it's not supposed to be a guess. It's supposed to be by some evidence.
Yeah.
But you can't sort of take the law into your own hands, and if you filed a
True.
police report, I'm going to scrap his engine. That's inappropriate. But with regard to the $800 that he paid him, there's no question he worked on the other truck. And he said he worked on it for 2 days.
To drive it.
And the plaintiff didn't have a license to drive it anyway.
Yeah.
Didn't he say, I needed one functional vehicle? So something like that.
We'll have to get Whitney to read it back.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Boyfriend Ryan Trunell for the cost of a car, an assault, and filing a false restraining order.
Court come to order. All rise.
Be seated, please.
Hello, Judge. Hi. Case number 204, Bernero versus Trunell.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, you have to tell me, are you Miss or Mr.?
For the duration of this case, I will refer to as Mr. for legal terms.
Mr. Trunell.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Bumel, you and the defendant dated for how long?
2 years.
And according to what I read, during part of that period of time, you lived at your mom's house.
Yes.
From when to when?
From January to May.
Of what year?
2021.
Had you lived with each other prior to that?
Yes.
Where?
At his mom's.
And how long had you lived at his mom's?
About a year, once I turned 18.
Prior to your moving into his mom's, were you ever together?
Yes.
Where?
Well, we didn't live together. We were just, we were seeing each other, I mean.
From when to when?
From April to December of 2019. And then I moved in at the beginning of 2020.
So for a long time. Did you have plans to marry and
yes.
Had you discussed it?
Yes.
True?
We had those conversations, yeah.
Great. This case actually has to do with funds that you put in to a car that was supposed to be used by both of you, but since you didn't have a license, the car was put in your name. And the relationship took a bad turn, and you have the car. Is that right?
Yes.
And you, Ms. Bumel, want the money that you put into the car.
Yes, we agreed that I would get my half of the money if he kept the car.
Well, you didn't put in half the money. You only put in, according to you, a deposit.
Yes.
So you're not entitled to half the cost. The is that you filed a false restraining order against the defendant, and I believe you spent a little time in custody. Is that correct?
Yes, they took me in and fingerprinted me.
And that was after the breakup?
Yes.
All right, so let's go to the car. You were living with your mother when the car was purchased?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Trunell, month and year the car was purchased?
May of 2021.
So that was immediately prior to the breakup?
Yes.
What kind of car was purchased?
2014 Ford Focus SE.
And the purchase price?
We put down a deposit of $7,000. Total purchase of the car was just under $11,000.
So there was finance charge?
Yes.
On the car. Who financed the car?
I did.
Through what institution?
My bank account. I was paying it through my debit card while I was working.
I understand that, but what institution? What
Bank of America.
Bank of America. And what were the monthly payments?
$200, around there.
So if the car was purchased immediately prior to the breakup, the plaintiff really didn't get any benefit or use of the car. Very little, maybe at most 30 days. That be a fair statement?
I'd say so.
Fair statement?
Yes.
And how much, Ms. Buhlman, did you put into the car?
I put in $6,000.
Is that correct?
Correct.
I'd like to see proof that you put in $6,000. To see the bank statement.
There's one page that is not highlighted.
Totals to $7,000, Your Honor.
What is this that you gave me?
My bank statements for what I paid at CarMax, and then what I take out, I did because I did a cash deposit. So everything I took out at the ATM, I put right into my cash flow envelope I had for savings for the car. But there are 2 CarMax transactions. I did it in cash because I was told that it would be cheaper if I did it in cash because it won't be taxed if it was compared to a card.
Yeah, but these figures don't add up to the same thing as that.
Well, he did pay a little because that is $7,000.
No. But these figures I have on the 13th of May, which is when this car was purchased. I have you took out $800. You took out $1,520. You took out another $100.
Yes.
I may be missing something, but that's all I see.
No, and then, like I said, the ATM on the other 2 bank statements, it says $700, $800, and I believe another $500 for everything I took out in cash for down deposit.
I'm not following that. Are you understanding this? Take a look at this.
Sure.
You know.
So she's saying that these PNC bank statements was cash withdrawals that she then used towards, I'm assuming, this large $5,380 first bill, because the totals from this are only total to $2,420.
Right. Well, that's all I have. That's your bank statement. This thing that you handed me first is actually unreliable because my 14-year-old child could make that up on a computer. I'm looking at your car that you purchased.
I have the contract, the bill of sale.
Contract. Yeah, I'd like to see it. And I'd like to see your bank statement, please.
I don't have bank statements with me.
Any reason?
In my search, there were no correlations on May 13th towards the purchase. Only records that came up were towards the insurance and car payments that followed after the date. So I did not believe it was reasonable for me to submit that as evidence.
In the future, you should let the fact finder determine whether it's reasonable or not, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, when you finance the car, what this requires you to do is to maintain insurance.
Yes.
And it requires you to maintain insurance for both liability and collision until the remainder of the loan is paid off.
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
Good. Now, without going into anything else, the 2 of you are no longer together. We may have to get into that later on the protective order, but the car was totaled.
Yes.
After the breakup.
Yes.
And the car was totaled and insured so that there was payment by the insurance company.
Yes.
How much?
$6,000.
Do you have any proof of that?
No.
Now, when you received the $6,000, the balance of your loan was $7,000. When was the car totaled?
September 29th of 2021.
So you had the car for a few months and made a few payments.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this looks to me in a couple of car payments, which didn't total $6,000.
Correct.
Well, why didn't you give her the rest of the money? Are you following me? I mean, that doesn't seem like rocket science. It wasn't your money. The 2 of you broke up. And it's clear to me that you had a minimal investment in this dollar-wise.
The reason I didn't was mainly because I was the only person that could hold on to the car and keep it legally. Because it was under my insurance, I was able to finance it from there.
Okay. Well, what you should have said to me was, I got a check for $6,000, but the $6,000, didn't that have to go to Bank of America?
Yes, it did. It went to Bank of America, went to my account. I used it towards paying off medical bills from the accident, and I used it towards rent for my home.
Well, why didn't you use it towards paying off the car loan?
The insurance company had paid off the rest of what I was owed to pay on the car to CarMax. They paid it off.
Oh, so they paid it off, plus they gave you $6,000.
No, let me correct. I apologize. I'm very nervous. The insurance company, after the incident, had paid off the rest of what was owed to CarMax from me.
Okay, so the insurance company paid off to the lender.
Yes.
Which was left, which was, let's say, $6,000.
Yes.
And in addition to that, they sent you a check.
Yes, I used that check towards my bills, and I used it towards my rent.
Okay, well, that you can't do, because that really wasn't your money. You didn't spend that money. Didn't you feel as if it was appropriate to give it back to her?
I would have if I wasn't in the situation that I was. And
what situation were you?
I was injured.
Who is this? Is this your mother?
Yes.
Okay. Are you living with your mom?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so you weren't on the street. I assume that you feed your child when you have to.
He was actually taking care of me.
To that money, you were compensated for it by the insurance company, and you had no right to keep it for your own bills. Okay. Got it?
Yes.
Easy. Easy peasy. Now, next is your allegation that he assaulted you and filed a false restraining order.
Yes.
Okay, so now let's jump to you are no longer living together. This is after May of 2021. You had an encounter, according to your papers, with the defendant. Tell me when and where that happened.
So October 6th at a Gloucester City Park, right down the street from where I was staying, so I walked there. And we both agreed for me to pick up my things because he still had some of my belongings.
Did you make the appointment to meet by text, by email?
Yes.
Text?
Yes.
Anybody have those texts?
Let me see if I do.
I do not. My phone was destroyed.
I only have the text from when he texted me the car accident when I said I was planning to take my car back. And right after that, I then planned to meet up with him to get the rest of my stuff back.
Okay, well, you don't have the text involving that. Okay, so you did in fact meet at a park.
Yes.
How did you get there?
I walked there. I was staying at a friend's house.
How did you get there?
I drove my mother's car.
Okay, now you're in the park. Tell me what happened, and this is in October.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we meet at the park, and he gives me my belongings, and then I asked him because throughout the breakup and afterwards, I knew there were some things he was hiding from me. So I asked him if he was hiding anything and to get some closure. Hit me, and then I said...
You said to him, I don't know what I did wrong.
Yes.
Because he moved out.
Well, from the reason he told me we broke up, he said it was mental illness. And then I felt like I wasn't helping if I could do any more. I felt like I could have done more because I was very accepting of who he is now. And so since that happened and I was so accepting of him, then he threatened to hit me. And I was very confused. And I just said, okay. And then he shoved it and swung at me.
And at no time did you hit him?
After that, I did defend myself and I did hit him.
What did you hit him with?
Just my hands. I pushed him just to get him off of me.
Was he injured?
By scratches, yes.
Where?
On the face. There was like 2 scratches I saw.
And what about you?
I had bruises on my shoulders, both shoulders, and then I had a swelling on my head.
Either of you have photographs of the injuries?
I do.
I'd like to take a look at them.
20-year-old Hannah Buhlman says ex-boyfriend Ryan Trunell is responsible for a car down payment and injuries from an assault. Ryan said he was the one assaulted.
Either of you have photographs of the injuries?
I do.
I'd like to take a look at them.
Thank you.
Okay. How did it end, the incident in the park?
So I just pushed him on the ground and I walked away.
And where did you go?
I first went back to his house. I did go to his house because he still had one of my big bags.
Okay, so after this incident, you pushed him down. You went back to his house with him?
No, I with my friend.
Well, your friend wasn't with you in the park.
Yes, I walked to my friend's house. I let him know what happened, and then we drove to his house so I can get the rest of my belongings that I couldn't carry home.
And what happened when you got...
And so then he just told me, sorry, I told you I was mentally unstable. And I'm like, I just want my stuff back. And I grabbed it and I left.
So you got your things back?
Yeah.
And you both said, I'm sorry. Does that sound correct?
No.
Well, tell me your version of, you had this argument in the park.
We had an argument in the park. She was asking me questions about why the relationship had ended. I had explained that it was through emotional turmoil, mental illness, and that she was not being very supportive. She was very toxic, and she was very aggressive with me. And when I had told her that I was going through all of this stuff and that I felt bad for things that happened in a relationship, I told her that you need to understand that you did me wrong too. She said, so what? I pushed her. She swung first. I swung back. We fought. We broke up the fight in the beginning. I apologized. Her items were on the ground. I picked them up. I handed them to her. She punched me in the face twice. Post that, grabbed my hair, pulled it, and then we broke up the fight after. I got in my car. I went home first. She went back across the street to her friend's place. I was at the apartment. I was just talking to my landlords about some stuff that my mother and I had to take care of. I don't exactly remember. As I was coming back up from the apartment, her and her friend had walked up, threatened to charge me with assault, and demanded the $7,000 for the car then and there. I said I didn't have it. I apologized for what had happened.
Didn't have it? You apologized for spending the money?
Yeah.
That's what part of the argument was about, back at your apartment.
Well, there wasn't an argument on that.
Did you both go to the police station?
Yes.
Yes.
And who went first?
I did.
But you didn't go to the police station immediately after the incident. You went to the police station after she said she's going to charge you with assault.
Yes.
And do you have a copy with you of the police report that you filed?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
You have a copy of the police report you filed?
I do not.
You do not. Okay. So you were not injured, and What I'm putting together here is that you went to the police station and filed this because she had threatened to go to the police and charge you with assault. You went there, got there first, and you got there second. Is that right? And by the time you got there, is that the time they took you into custody?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever, Mr. Trinnell, seek medical attention for any of these injuries that I see in these photographs?
No.
The answer is either yes or no.
No.
And you do acknowledge, Mr. Trinnell, that the initial aggressor, physical aggressor, which is what you testified to. Let's go back to his initial testimony, Whitney. I believe he testified that, not sure, she was aggressive, she was loud, she wouldn't accept it, and he pushed her. But I'd like to get the exact wording.
So I told her that you need to understand that you did me wrong too. She said, so what? I pushed her. She swung first. I swung back. We fought.
Okay, so after you pushed her, after you put your hands on her, according to you, she swung at you.
Correct.
Okay, well, you didn't expect her to give you a kiss after you pushed her. $6,000 in damages. Well, you already have, according to you, that money invested in the car, which he got back. So you are entitled to that. And since that's the extent of your claim against the defendant, I'm granting your petition in the amount of $6,000. Judgment for the plaintiff. We're finished here. Thank you.
Thank you.
This court is adjourned.
There were a lot of factors going on, I believe, just between both of us.
I'm just more than grateful to finally get this over with. I've been waiting too long and
Just a lot, I think, that I had to work on, too.
fighting for it and put so much work and time into it.
A lot of the things that were going on in my head was me being depressed, having to deal with a lot of what was going on in the world at the same time, too.
Well, he was like trying on makeup and stuff when we were together, and I was showing him how to do makeup, and I was being very supportive and just telling him, you know, you should get help, go get a therapist.
I felt like she was pushing me away.
And I don't know why he felt the other way around, because
We just both go our separate ways, and we both just try and be happy. And
I didn't know what to do, and what I was doing I thought was supportive.
That must have been a very difficult breakup for both of them after being together for a significant number of years. But that's tip number one of Judy Justice is never put your hands on someone. And tip number two, never purchase property, dogs, cars, timeshares with someone who's not your legal partner or without a contract. I mean, we've seen this time and time again.
For medical bills after being hit by a car.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Case number 2020 Hildreth Mahasani versus Santiago.
Thank you. Miss Hildreth.
Yes.
Pronounce your last name for me, sir.
Mahasani.
Mahasani.
Yes.
You two were crossing the street in San Diego?
In Carlsbad Village.
Is that in San Diego?
It is. It's a suburb of San Diego.
Is that where you live?
Correct, in Carlsbad.
And you were hit by Miss Santiago, who was driving her mother's car.
Correct.
Miss Santiago acknowledges that she hit you, and you were seriously injured. You've had shoulder surgery. You were both injured.
Correct.
When did this happen?
This happened on Friday, September 4th, 2020.
I just have a couple of preliminary questions before I get into the facts of it.
Sure.
I assume that since this accident happened in 2020, that you tried to sue either the defendant and or her mother as the car's owner.
Well, we would have done so, but the driver was uninsured.
That's the question. You would have done so,
Yes.
except the mother had no insurance.
It is my knowledge that the mother had insurance, but and which I have the evidence, that her daughter was excluded from the policy.
The policy, and therefore the insurance company disclaimed.
Correct.
I'd like to see that.
Absolutely.
That's why your mother's not here.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, that's why your mother's not here, Miss Santiago.
Without her knowing.
Miss Santiago, that's why your mother's not here.
No.
Well, were you excluded from the insurance policy? That's either a yes or a no.
Yes.
Then you shouldn't have been driving the car.
Yeah, I know.
Just a second. Then you
I
shouldn't
know.
have been driving the car.
I took the car. Well, it was
I didn't
my
ask you a question.
responsibility,
I didn't
and I took
ask
the car
you.
without
Do you
her
understand?
permission.
They don't listen to you when I'm speaking. When I ask you a question, you'll answer me. I don't want to hear some pat answer. I want to hear a lot of I'm sorries. I want to hear a lot of I'm sorries.
Why would I say I'm sorry if they didn't pay attention when they were crashing?
You weren't supposed to be behind the wheel of a car.
But I was paying
You
attention.
weren't supposed to be behind the wheel of a car.
But why they didn't pay attention?
I'm not speaking to you. I just told you why. Why should I say I'm sorry? Hey, be quiet. Why should I say I'm sorry if they weren't paying attention? Because you weren't supposed to be behind the wheel of a car. If you weren't behind the wheel of a car, whether they were paying attention or not would be irrelevant. You weren't supposed to be driving. She thinks you have a big mouth. You don't have a bigger mouth than me, madam. I guarantee you, the last person who drove yesterday that wasn't supposed to drive yesterday because they were drunk, killed six.
Drunk.
Nobody's listening to you. When I'm speaking, nobody's listening to you. Killed 6 people. Last person who drove that wasn't supposed to be behind the wheel of a car killed 6 people. You were not. Hey,
drunk.
I'm speaking. You were not supposed to be behind the wheel of a car. Don't you understand that?
I understand.
Are you
that.
stupid? You were not supposed to be behind the wheel of a car. You were an excluded driver, and you were an excluded driver for a reason.
Not only that, you're.
I just don't like stupid. Our investigation, which is after you notified the insurance company, determined that the driver of the insured's car, Jennifer Ramirez, was not covered by the policy. That's what you told me.
Correct.
I don't understand this. You were walking, correct?
Correct. Both.
What is this? Your driving privileges will be suspended on November 21st. What is that?
I think there was a misunderstanding that we were actually driving a vehicle. Yeah. And when I called the DMV and I explained that, no, we're actually pedestrians, then they said, oh, I'm sorry, disregard that.
Yeah.
Stupid.
And
do you have a letter from them indicating that this is wrong?
They just told me that we can disregard it, and they just corrected it. That's all they did.
And it was stopped because she was also unlicensed?
Just a second. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I'm not there with Big Mouth. Okay, this happened on September 4th, 2020. What time of the day?
It was in the evening.
What time?
Was about 8 p.m.
It was, around 8 o'clock.
Light or dark outside?
Dark.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the intersection where this happened?
It is, Your Honor.
Ms. Santiago, is that a fair and accurate representation of the intersection where this happened?
Yes.
So at the intersection where this happened, there were lines across the highway indicating pedestrian walkway.
Correct.
And there were 2 signs indicating pedestrian walkway.
There were 3 signs. One in the center median and 1 on each side.
On September 4th, Ms. Santiago, this requires a yes or a no answer from you. On September the 4th, 2020, did you have a valid driver's license?
Lisa Hildreth and Reza Mahasani claim 20-year-old Jennifer Santiago walked into oncoming traffic.
Now, on September 4th, Ms. Santiago, this requires a yes or a no answer from you. On September the 4th, 2020, did you have a valid driver's license?
I didn't, Your Honor.
I said it's either a yes or a no. Did you have a valid driver's license?
No.
Did you ever have a valid driver's license?
No.
Do you have a valid driver's license today?
No, Your Honor, because they...
That's a no. What's your name?
Vanessa.
What?
Giles.
Stand up. Did you come with her today?
Yes.
How did you get here?
I drove. My license.
Just a second. You drove?
Yes.
In whose car?
My car.
What kind of car is it?
Kia.
Did you ever drive with Miss Santiago?
Yes.
When? Did you ever drive in a car where she was the driver and you were the passenger?
Yes.
When?
September 4th, 2020. 2 years ago.
Other than September 4th, 2020, did you ever drive with Miss Santiago where you were the passenger?
Yes.
When?
September 4th.
I said other than September 4th.
No.
Other than September 4th.
Other than that, no.
On September 4th at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Where were you?
We were at the beach. Carlsbad Beach.
You were at the beach. Who else was at the beach?
Santiago, and another friend. He's a minor. He's 16.
There were 3 of you at the beach. Anybody else that you knew at the beach?
No.
How long had you been at the beach?
Like for an hour.
So you got there at 6 o'clock in the evening?
We got there at 7. We were going back home at 8.
So you got to the beach at 7. What did you do at the beach at 7 o'clock?
We would just...
Santiago pick you up, or did you meet at her house? Just think, take a breath. Did you meet at her house, or did Miss Santiago pick you up?
She picked me up.
How far do you live from her?
2 minutes away.
And what about the 16-year-old minor?
3 minutes away.
Did she pick up the 16-year-old minor?
Yes.
How old was Miss Santiago in September of 2020?
18.
Are you a good friend of hers?
Yes, I am.
You knew she didn't have a driver's license?
Yes.
Did you know why she didn't have a driver's license?
She was still studying for a test.
Had she taken the test before?
Yes, she has.
She had taken the test before.
Yes.
Do you remember how many times?
Yes.
How many times did she take the test?
2 times.
And the 2 times she took the test, she failed it?
Yes, she did.
Okay. So now she's driving without a license because she's failed her driving test twice at the time of this. So she's studying to pass it maybe for the 3rd time, right?
Yes.
And now we have 2 years later, she still doesn't have a driver's license.
Yes.
Do you know why?
No.
Well, you're her good friend. Didn't you ask her? Well, it's 2 years later. Did you ever pass your driving test?
She hasn't yet.
Sit. Now tell me what happened at 8 o'clock on the 4th of September, 2020.
I have pictures if you like, and would it be okay to approach the screen to show you better?
No, it's not necessary. You were crossing the street.
Correct.
In a crosswalk, she hit you.
Correct. We were.
That's what crossing the street in a crosswalk, and she hit you.
Yeah. So we had come to the crosswalk sign on the left side of the photo. We pressed the button. It illuminated the flashing lights to indicate that it was okay to cross. We looked to the left. Those 2 cars were already parked. We proceeded to the middle and noticed that the car in the furthest lane from us, that car was already...
Hey, don't speak. Hey, listen, for someone who can't take and pass a driver's test 3 times, at least I would keep my mouth shut until I look at you for an answer. Do you understand?
Yes.
And it was estimated by the officer that we...
No. She hit you in a crosswalk. That's a crosswalk. This young lady knew I'm not... Did you hear me? I'm not speaking to you. You don't understand this was a really bad day for this kind of case to come into court. You do understand that?
Yes.
Okay, good. And you know why this is a very bad day for your case to come into court?
No.
Then you don't read the newspapers. I suggest if you read the newspaper, maybe you would be able to pass your driving test. Because either you failed the written portion or you failed the driving portion, one or the other. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good. Now we understand each other. Now you're almost at I'm sorry. You're almost at I'm sorry. When the defendant's car struck you, where did you land?
I have photos to show.
I'd like to see it.
It kind of shows on the second photo there.
Oh, you hit her windshield. Who hit her windshield?
We
Is that
both
you?
did,
Both.
Your Honor. And the hood.
That's not true. I only saw that her husband, that he hit the shield. It wasn't her.
What an idiot.
Wow.
Kevin, can I see the police report, please?
Sure.
See?
I'd also like you to show her these. I just want her to take a look at them. To know what happens when you act irresponsibly. And you do things that you're not supposed to do, like take a car and drive it when you have no license, when you failed your driving test twice.
Lisa Hildreth and Reza Mahassani are accusing 20-year-old Jennifer Santiago of hitting them in a crosswalk. while she was driving without a license.
Okay, your last name is?
Giles?
You spoke to the police that day.
Yes, I did.
I don't know what you're doing here as a witness. She stated she did not see what happened. That's what it says here.
Yes.
Now, just a second. That's what it says here. Uncross your arms. Now you can sit down. Gillis stated she did not see what happened. However, she identified Miss Santiago as the driver. And then there was a witness. Witness 1 stated she was riding as a passenger in a vehicle driving northbound on the 3100 block of Carlsbad Boulevard. The two plaintiffs were crossing the road in a marked crosswalk on the south side of the intersection of Carlsbad Boulevard and Oak Avenue. The two were crossing from the west side of the street to the east side of the street. The yellow warning lights next to the crosswalk were flashing.
They were not.
Witness 1 observed Plaintiff 1 driving northbound towards the crosswalk at a fast speed. She drove through. I'm speaking, not you.
I was not.
I'm speaking, not you. I'm reading from a statement in the police report from a witness who stopped when this accident happened that you don't know. Neither do you. Okay, so now we have a witness who neither one of you know, who said the yellow lights were flashing, even if they were the officer who did a blood test there for alcohol. States as follows. During the investigation, P1, that would be you, displayed objective symptoms of intoxication. I noticed her eyes were slightly red and watery. Her speech was very quiet. I determined P1 was under the influence of cannabis.
That's not true, Your Honor.
Just a second. Do you have any supplementary police reports?
The only other thing that I have from the officer is an email that he...
No. An email to whom?
An email from the police officer to us.
I'd like to see it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what you said to the police officer was, and the police officer responded to you, that the report came back negative.
Correct.
And he said, I'm not changing it. Therefore, it's not a criminal matter. You have to sue her civilly.
Correct.
Because clearly the accident was her fault.
Correct.
Were you taken to the hospital that day?
We both were.
And you were taken to jail?
Yeah.
When was the last time you took a driving test? Month and year.
I haven't taken no driving test.
When was the last time you took a driving test, madam? You failed twice. So I want to know when the last time was that you took a driving test.
I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
Did you take a driving test in the year 2021?
Yeah, I did.
Did you pass that driving test?
No.
Was that your third before 2020?
No.
So I asked you, in 2021, did you take it? You said yes, you didn't pass it. And I asked you, was that the third or the fourth test that you had?
That was my second.
No. I don't know how much more that a court system can do, but to say to people who don't have driver's licenses, especially in your case where you tried to get a license but failed to pass on at least 2 occasions before this incident, which means that you were a risk to be on the road because you couldn't pass a driving test twice before this incident. Now, you want to tell me whether you, and this requires a short answer, not one of your long ones. Did you have your mother's permission to take the car that day to pick her up and go to the beach?
No.
Have you ever had your mother's permission to take the car and go anywhere?
No.
So in effect, if you had no license and you didn't ask for permission, then you stole the car.
No.
What do you mean no? You
didn't.
didn't have permission of the owner to take the car. You weren't a licensed driver. Therefore, there was no insurance. Well, let's go back. Did you ever ask your mother to use the car?
No, not at all.
And what happened after you had this accident in your mother's car and after you got out of jail? What happened between you and your mother?
Well, she was sad because I was in jail. And, well, she was also mad because, like, why would I take the car without her permission?
Why did you take the car without her permission?
Well, I honestly didn't thought that this would happen.
Nobody thinks that an accident is going to happen. I don't think you intentionally hit these two people.
No.
I don't think you intentionally.
Before I told them that I was sorry, and I'm telling them again that I'm sorry.
Good. That's better. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $10,000. We're finished.
This court is adjourned.
Well, I'm really pleased with the judge's decision.
I didn't see anything until the guy hit the windshield.
We have a young child, so we understand that the driver was young and mistakes happen.
I started screaming and I was scared.
For about 3 hours in the hospital, I didn't know if she was going to live or die, basically.
I was so scared, like I just stayed there. I was in shock.
It's been rough.
I told them that I was sorry that the accident happened.
I had like internal bleeding in my arm. I have loss of range of motion in my hand.
Well, I didn't even went to see them because I was so scared.
It was the unluckiest day and the luckiest day of our life. So we're here and we're grateful for that.
I was super scared. Like, I was like, I killed them. Like, I was crying in jail.
We both have to deal with physical injuries, but like Lisa said, it was the unluckiest and luckiest moment of our life, so we're grateful that we're here.
Being pretty close to